I don't see either of the minority leads in the room at this time. I don't know if they are coming or not, but to the members of the minority that are here, I just want to give you a heads up. If you wish to designate someone to make final comments at the end of the hearing today, you'd be more than welcome to. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Dibble will not be here. He's not feeling well, nor is Senator Kent. And Senator Dietzig is on her way.
Thank you, Senator Pappas. And so perhaps you could, if you wouldn't mind, when they get here, if you would communicate to them that as members of the respective committees, Judiciary and Transportation, will entertain any member that you wish to speak in terms of just a short wrap up at the end of the hearing today.
I'm sure Senator Franzen would be willing to do that for Transportation, and I'll check with Senator Dietzig.
Thank you, Senator Pappas. And Senator Franzen, is that agreeable to you?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Okay. With that, we are going to move on to our agenda. And at this time, I would invite Commissioner Anderson Kelleher and Colonel Langer, if you wouldn't mind coming forward to the testifiers table. And I believe we also have Mr. Mike Legard from MnDOT, who is available. He's seated right behind the commissioner, and he would be available to answer any questions that the commissioner may get stuck on. I doubt it, but she might. First of all, Commissioner and Colonel Langer, thank you very much for coming in today. I've already given you kind of a heads up of what I wanted to talk about today, and that's, the closure of roads, in particularly freeways, I think. I consider road closures and freeway closures very, very serious public safety issues. I think in terms of folks are trying to get to work or get home after work and take care of their families. We've got people who need to get to a doctor's appointment and take care of medical issues that they are concerned about. We may have parents who've got kids in the car and they're on a freeway and they're suddenly confronted with a blocked freeway that they don't expect. That seems to me to be a real traffic hazard. I think in terms of, say, first responders or folks who are driving ambulances trying to get to or deliver folks with medical problems that, easily could be, really, really serious. We have police, for instance, or firefighters that are trying to get to some place within the city and can't get there quickly enough because things are erupting in riots are erupting in different areas of the city. So those are the things that I'm thinking about when it comes to the topic of roads being closed. It isn't just simply a road close. I think it's really an important safety consideration, and that's why I've invited you to come in here this morning to talk to us about. So first of all, with respect to Commissioner Anderson Kelleher, and then I'll get to Colonel Langer. Commissioner, are the types of safety concerns that I just outlined the types of criteria or concerns that MnDOT has when you as the commissioner decide to legally close a road? And how do you determine which road and when to close them? Commissioner.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to the members of this joint committee. I'm happy to see you. You're the most people I've seen, other than my husband, in a very long time. So it's kind of, it's great to see all of you.
I could make a similar claim with respect to my wife.
I understand.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So, Mr. Chairman, there are many types of highway closures that happen in Minnesota. So I want to just first put the context around this, that in the statute 160.27 subdivision 8, the commissioner is given authority to close highways in regard to public safety. And there are many examples of this, of course. Many of them are in response to something that has happened on that highway. It could be a road buckling. It could be the ice storm that happened between Christmas and New Year's this past year. But each of these are a little bit different in how our maintenance and operations staff would recommend a closure. And so I think that that's partly what you're interested in is, why are we closing? The main time that we close roads is actually construction. And you're all familiar with that. And we try to notice people in a significant amount of time to give them time to respond. The civil unrest period, it was a highly unusual period. And it also coincided with something I had never seen in my life. I'm a lifelong Minnesotan. I had never seen a curfew. I think in North Mankato, when I'd go visit my cousin to go swimming, there was a night curfew in the summer sometimes. And maybe the police officers would come through and tell kids to go home now if you're under 14 or whatever. But I'd never seen a curfew where we were all under curfew at once. I think that it's important to think about the context of what we were seeing. And what we were seeing during the civil unrest period, and particularly Friday night, was a night that I was watching, like many of you were watching. We had a UPS driver who got stranded on the highway with protesters around the UPS driver. The truck was unloaded on the highway and became a fire site. The truck driver was safe, the UPS driver, but when I watched that and saw that and talked to our maintenance and operations staff, we also had on Friday night an incident where people got up onto 35W by foot and were throwing things off over, it was a little hard to determine at first, but it was actually Lake Street. People were throwing things onto Lake Street. The next morning, I contacted Colonel Langer after talking to our maintenance and operations staff and said, do we have a role to play here to assist with the ability of fire and police to move through and get to locations and try very hard to also coincide with the curfew. People weren't supposed to be out. I want to remind you, you are correct. There were exemptions, Senator Newman, and there was at no time that I think anyone would have stopped an ambulance or any sort of first responder during this period of time. But that is how we at MnDOT then worked with our partners at DPS to come up with a closure that we will refer to as the super closure, which means the closure inside the Beltway. So it allowed for free commerce and travel around the 694, 494 Beltway, and there were a number of other ways that people could get in. But we tried very hard to look at an area here where, from a public safety standpoint, it had too many risk points that were happening in terms of what we were seeing on that Friday night. And so it was very limited. That closure only happened for 2 nights. There were some more limited closures beyond that, but I would say that's very much. And usually in a closure, and in this case, we were working in partnership with DPS and the patrol to make sure that they supported and believed that this was also the right thing to do. So our, maintenance and operations staff at MnDOT did a variety of types of closures during that period of time. I'm going to stop there, Mr. Chair. I hope that helps, that the reason for the closure was actually for public safety, and it really was not about some of the other things I've seen in the media.
Thank you, Commissioner. Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair.
Welcome again. Good to see you. Colonel Langer, when I think of roads being closed, and I could be off on this, but I think it in terms of, there are legal closures and there are illegal closures. What Commissioner Anderson Kelleher has just described is a process by which MnDOT will go through legal closures. Then there are illegal closures, and that's when folks who are rioting and, throwing things onto the highway, blocking the highway. And that, of course, also creates a different type of public safety concern. Could you walk us through, Colonel, assuming I'm correct, legal and illegal closures, could you walk us through the state troopers' response to those two different types of closures, and tell us whether or not I am correct that this really is a public safety concern and is something that we really have to be careful with. So if you would talk about enforcement by your organization of legal and then illegal road closures. Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Matt Langer, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the Chief of the State Patrol. Mr. Chair, you outlined a number of good questions. I think the easy way to answer the planned road closures, of course, for the State Patrol are a lot easier because there's time for DOT to do the good work that they do to pre-plan, to have the appropriate resources, to have the appropriate public messaging, to have detour routes established, sometimes put on the media, of course, on the 511 website, the changeable message boards, all the things that we're used to seeing to help the public get wherever they are intending to go. And during the period of the civil unrest, MnDOT, for the 2 nights that they closed the freeway down for public safety purpose proactively, we didn't have state troopers actually working with DOT. But most of the time for construction pre-planned closures, we do have state troopers working with DOT because not every driver obeys the signage, and there are just problems that we can encounter sometimes in those even pre-planned closures. The second question that is the bigger issue for us, I think, to wrestle with is how we handle people that are walking on the freeway with the desire to just exercise their First Amendment right peacefully, or walking on the freeway to do something more sinister in nature. And to be quite clear, in Minnesota, it is illegal to do both on the freeway. It is not legal to exercise one's First Amendment right peacefully on the freeway. It's illegal to walk on the freeway. The reason why it's illegal to walk on the freeway is it's extremely dangerous. And there's nothing that I can do as the State Patrol Colonel, and our troopers can work as hard as they possibly can. But the fact of the matter is there's nothing that we can do to guarantee one's safety while on foot on the freeway. And if you look around the country, whether it's been pre-planned protest events with roads closed or unplanned protest events that end up having the road closed, there's extreme danger to the people that are on the road. Most recent incident in Seattle that resulted in 1 individual killed and 1 critically injured, that was a pre-planned closure of the freeway. And so from the State Patrol's perspective, whenever there's a breach of the freeway by a group that wishes to demonstrate or protest, that is a harrowing experience for us as traffic safety professionals. It shaves years off our life because we're quite concerned that someone is going to get hurt, because the amount of resources that you have to mobilize to safely close the road, which is job number 1, whether the freeway is taken illegally or legally, the response is critical, and whether it's DOT or us. Just last Friday night when the freeway is breached, the response of the troopers is to make sure that that area is as safe as it possibly can be so that we don't have drivers errantly driving into a crowd of people. Our second, and sometimes as simultaneously as we can make it happen, is our goal is to get people off the freeway and to take any enforcement action that we can against the activity that led to that breach. I don't know if that answers all of your questions, Mr. Chair. If there's any follow-up, I'd be happy to answer.
First follow-up would be in terms of, in the event of a peaceful or a not peaceful, illegal occupation of a freeway, are the enforcement procedures of the folks who are on the freeway any different?
Mr. Chair, no. So if we're working a pre-planned closure and someone drives around a barricade, it's normal practice for the State Patrol to take enforcement action on that vehicle. If it's an illegal event on the freeway, it's the same thing. The context is very different, of course. If you have one errant driver that drives around a barricade, that's fairly easy to handle. If you have 1,500 people that walk on the freeway, the resources needed to safely deal with that from an enforcement standpoint and hold people accountable is difficult. That said, it's still our goal to do that and to hold people accountable, and that's exactly what we've done the past few events that have been involving a breach of the freeway. Even if it's holding some people accountable or the leaders of the event accountable, we aim to do that as safely as possible.
I can understand very easily that if you have one person that goes around a barricade, you can deal with that. I'm particularly interested in the example you gave of, say, 1,500 people walking around, on a freeway in protest or riot, whatever the case might be. What is your protocol? How do you handle a situation where there's 1,500 people on the freeway blocking it, and it's an illegal activity?
Mr. Chair, that's a good question, and it's extremely difficult for us. The reason why it's extremely difficult is it's resource intensive. And so one of the ways that I've described this, because I've talked to a lot of citizens who get frustrated about this for a variety of reasons, and I tell them all the same thing. As the State Patrol, our job is to keep roads open and moving. So there's no embracing by the State Patrol this notion of freeways being blocked for illegal activity. It's counter to why we exist in the first place. But I've given this example, and it seems to make sense to people. If there's 600 people peacefully or not peacefully, either way, protesting on the freeway, how many state troopers does it take to enforce the law against 600 people who are breaking the law? And most of the time, the answer is, well, probably at least 600. And I say, yes, that's correct, at least 600. We have that number of troopers across the entire state of Minnesota, certainly not on some Thursday evening in downtown Minneapolis. So for us, to answer your question, Mr. Chair, the challenge is simply getting the resources mobilized to effectively deal with that incident, whether it's legal or illegal. And so priority number one with the troopers who are working is to put your resources and your direction toward getting that road closed to make sure it's safe. Two reasons. Number one, you get traffic moving in a way where, as you pointed out, that people can go about their business, somehow get out of that area rather than stuck on the interstate for hours. Number two is to make sure that we do our best to not have any vehicle versus pedestrian encounters. And so the fact of the matter is, when those illegal events happen on the freeway, for a significant period of time, our resource allocation and dedication is keeping the freeway safe. And if we're moving into a mass arrest type situation, for us, it's calling troopers in from all across the region to help deal with that. And that takes time for reasons that I think people understand.
Your answer with respect to the individuals that are on the freeway, if they're 600 or 1,500, is honestly exactly what I had anticipated that you would say. I mean, it's really a difficult situation for law enforcement to handle. And I think that's just the reality of life. So I think what you are now describing is to protect both the folks who are on the freeway, either legally or illegally, and protect folks who are driving. You must be taking some kind of action behind the protesters, be it a mile or a block or something. You must be doing something to cut off access to the freeway so that you are preventing people who believe they are legally operating on the freeway from running into the protesters. Could you walk us through that procedure? First of all, is that the first action that you take? And then secondly, how do you go about doing that?
Mr. Chair, great question. So it's a combination of art and science. We have phenomenally talented state troopers who know their area exceptionally well. they're the ones that you often see. But we also have phenomenally talented and experienced dispatchers who are working side by side with DOT, who I believe has phenomenally talented people in side-by-side wisdom of Minnesota many years ago in the development of the Regional Transportation Management Center, the RTMC in Roseville. So the DOT and the State Patrol are co-located literally next to each other. And so that allows for an extremely effective response when you're talking about detour routes, 511, public messaging. Most states have nothing like that. And we're fortunate in Minnesota that we do to help with that coordinated effort on the fly to help keep the road safe and to get those detour routes planned. I will say that from my experience and when I watch the troopers, it is very complicated. If you're talking about an event at 94 in Lexington, it's very complicated when you look at the interchange with 280 and you look at the interchange with 35E plus all the ramps in between. Is it just westbound? Is it eastbound? Is it both? The amount of resources that you have to put into safely closing a road, whether it's in advance or on the fly, is really incredible. It's not just a few people. It's dozens of people involved to do that safely, especially if it's at night. Because a great concern for us is if you don't have that backup, and DOT knows this as well as anybody, then you have traffic coming into those closures at higher speed, and you have to have plenty of advanced warning to help folks see that there's something ahead and to see the effective detour route. So it's a combination of art and science. It's very complicated, and I believe we have extremely talented people that know how to do this on a moment's notice. It just is frustrating because we never have the resources at the moment's notice to do it as well as we'd like.
Thank you, Colonel. Before I go to member questions, Commissioner, did you want to add anything?
So, Mr. Chair, I think in regard to that procedure, one of the things that's very typical is for the patrol to ask for MnDOT assistance. And what happens is there's usually a rolling brigade of trucks that then will come and help to shepherd the traffic off on a safer route. And that is a very typical thing that you would see, whether that closure is because suddenly we had storm damage or because we have a buckling of a road or there are people on the road. That is the normal procedure. So when you mentioned the mile upstream, that's where we come into the equation with maintenance and operations professionals who know their job very well, and they're able almost all the time to keep that brigade tight and not allow vehicles to go through a brigade. And so that's an important concept in being able to move folks away from a dangerous situation.
Yeah, from what both of you have described, very honestly, seems to me the most dangerous part of occupying that freeway with pedestrians is having a vehicle come in at a high rate of speed. And, that's dangerous for all concerned. So I do appreciate your answers. We can now go to member questions. Senator Ralph.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Colonel Langer, first of all, I want to publicly acknowledge the professionalism and the fine work that your forces do. When I was here in the Capitol several times when we had unrest, and the actions of your officers were absolutely outstanding. So I definitely want to publicly acknowledge that for you. I just have a follow-up question, I think, for what Senator Newman was talking about. And in preface, it is my understanding from listening to your testimony here that you actually have independent authority to at least close off a portion of the freeway without having to seek MnDOT's approval or anything through the commissioner.
Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Ralph, absolutely. We have authority to direct traffic on the freeway.
All right. So I guess the question that I have is more towards, we've already seen and heard testimony as to the obvious dangers of having people on the freeway. So I like to relate back to that Sunday evening when the tanker truck was coming across the bridge at a fair rate of speed, and there were, I don't know how many thousands of people were on that bridge. Obviously, it's amazing that no one was injured in that incident. Just a question, how did that truck get on? Did he actually go around a barrier, or was this before the barriers went up and as a result kind of slipped under the radar, so to speak?
Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Rolfe. The concept of the closure was to, in consultation with DPS and the State Patrol, was to have people not coming into the two downtowns, so that we were taking away, I think that the Colonel would say, taking away energy from the hot spots, limit the number of people who are coming into the areas, allow for safe passage of fire trucks, police presence, a number of things. And so when we made that decision together, working with the patrol, the idea is that we would block off exits physically that were inbound. So inbound ramps, you know, a good example would be Riverside and 26th between on 94, where it would be very easy to get down to the Lake Street area. And we also were seeing, it also has a high potential for people to walk out onto the road. So the focus was on the inbound. The decision was made that to leave outbound ramps open. So Hennepin-Lyndale is a intersection I'm very familiar with. When I served in the legislature, it was within my legislative district, and it is considered an outbound ramp because it allows people to get out of the downtown area, out of the west side of the city. We were in the process of closing the roads at that point. I want to, and you certainly could see this in the social media that we put out that day, we were planning an 8 p.m. closure in consultation with the State Patrol to coincide with the curfew. At about 4:15, 4:20 that day, I got a call from Mr. Leagard. Mr. Leagard is our Director of Maintenance and Operations in the metro area. And he said, our guys just had contact from the patrol, and they have asked us to move that closure up immediately and try to close by 5 o'clock. I called Commissioner Harrington to confirm that. I will tell you all, I did not know the reason for moving the closure up. But when Commissioner Harrington, who is the commander of the MAC at that point, confirms to me at about 4:20, Commissioner, I need you to close the roads, we swung into action. And we called in more people, we kept people over, it was about shift change, we did all sorts of things to close the roads as quickly as possible. We would later learn that one of the reasons for that move up was this large protest, peaceful protest group at US Bank Stadium. And there was a concern that that protest group was going to come out onto the highway. I will just tell you, MnDOT did not know that at that time. And so when we became aware there was a protest group, Mr. Leagard and his folks looked at what we have seen in the past, and that is people usually go down the...
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, Commissioner. I guess I was really, thank you. I was really actually looking specifically at the incident with the truck.
Yes, I'm getting there.
I understand that the procedures and that there was some rather rapid changes in it. I guess my question is very simply, was a barrier up, not why it was or wasn't, but was there a barrier where that, as best we could determine, where that truck entered the highway?
Mr. Chair and Senator Rolfe, there was not a barrier there, and there was not, at that point, planned to be a barrier there. That was a site we identified that State Patrol would have taken if they were available. And so the truck was trying to exit the city. That is the point. That was the point, was to allow traffic to go out. I think Colonel Langer can talk about the development of that protest and how quickly that group moved. But that is the case, that he had a right. And there were many other cars on the highway, Senator Rolfe. In fact, they were turning around and going in the opposite direction as the tanker kept going.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Rolfe.
And I guess that is my point, that, again, this is an example of how having people on a freeway uncontrolled can create a situation of extreme danger. And I guess my point here is not to try and say that somebody made a mistake and let that truck on. It is more to demonstrate that there is an extreme danger for having people on the freeway. And just through the grace of God or whatever, no one was injured in that. And that this is a reason why I think that we're looking into those policies and how we go about doing that in the future and trying to find ways to assist, if the legislature can play a role in that, in making sure that the patrol and the department have tools to be able to accomplish this quickly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I do think that that's a pretty good example of just how dangerous things can be. I know that when I saw it on TV, I was just literally holding my breath, because if that truck had gone into all of those folks on the freeway, the mayhem that would have resulted would have really been awful. But that's really I think the point is to illustrate just how dangerous that situation could have been. Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess this question is going to be directed towards Colonel Langer more than the commissioner. But again, thanks for being here again today. I know you've kind of been rung through the ringer for the last couple of weeks as far as we're concerned, and the questions we've been asking. You've really laid out some of the questions that I was going to start out by asking when you blatantly said that this is absolutely against the law. It's a dangerous situation for both our troopers and the people that are on the roadways, as much as it is the drivers that we're worried about. And you talked about some of the concepts and theories behind moving those people from the roadways, stopping the traffic flow. I think they work in conjunction with each other. And over the last few weeks, I, as well as the rest of the state, have probably witnessed, 3 main times when this has happened, both on the mostly on the 35W bridge. The one with the tanker truck, and then the 2 incidents since that's kind of popped up. Not quite as many people on the roadways. And MnDOT talked about, can you talk exactly in specific reference to these 3 incidents, what the State Patrol did when it came, because, as the public, like I did, watching that group of protesters on a freeway, and likewise, I don't see this coming to any sort of a halt at all. Obviously, the people are getting the recognition they want by taking the roadways. So question number 1 would be, specific to each one of these incidences, how did the state troopers react, when it came from that Sunday night that Senator Rolfe referenced, or the 2 other days that have been in the news as well?
Yep. Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Lang, all good questions. So like many people, I was in the MAC on that Sunday night, and I was watching that incredibly large group of people at US Bank Stadium. It's also important to note that the same night there was a very large group of people right here at the Capitol Complex in St. Paul. And so we were looking at both of those groups, trying to figure out what tonight is going to look like. I think it's been well established, the success that occurred Saturday night in quelling the unrest, and our goal, of course, was to continue that momentum into Sunday with the same response. And so when Commissioner Anderson-Kelleher talks about the State Patrol saying move the freeway closure up immediately, that was exactly because we were seeing what was happening with these groups, and we were seeing that the freeway was right there, and it was likely of interest in St. Paul as well. And so even though the plan was in place to close the freeways at 8 o'clock, we said just do it, just do it, just do it, because we did not have the resources to pull troopers out of the pre-planned operation to have success again Sunday night, I couldn't pull them to go deal with protesters on the freeway. And I really don't like to say that, because I'm a believer in our mission. It's why I'm in this position. I fully appreciate the role we have on traffic safety, but I also fully appreciate the space that we were in during that period of time forced us as peace officers to triage. And the reality is we had to stay where we were to keep our eye on the target, so to speak, to keep the unrest quelled for Sunday night. And so as soon as DOT started to implement the road closure, I felt better about it, because then we were at least doing everything we could at the moment with the resources we have to mitigate the dangers of people being on the freeway. And the National Guard was helping as much as possible too. So that's Sunday night. My role was to help get, and I watched Minneapolis Police Department do an outstanding job responding into that crowd to get the semi-driver out of there. I watched Twin City Towing do a phenomenal job of getting there quickly to get the truck out of there. Like, we know these things are flashpoints, and we need to get them out of there so that we can de-escalate the situation as much as possible. And then I watched phenomenal work by mobile field force commanders from many agencies, including the State Patrol and the mobile field force, do a textbook large mass arrest in an extremely peaceful manner. As for the two most recent events, and I should mention the investigation into the issue with the truck driver, both his driving and those that may have assaulted him, that's still an active criminal investigation from both perspectives. The two most recent events, which are more like what have become more normal, but haven't been normal over the course of my career, the pop-up events where a group assembles and they march and they get on the freeway. Those are really hard for us to manage in a different way, because just like we didn't have the resources to pull toward the event on Sunday night, on any given Friday night, I'd love to give the illusion that there are thousands of state troopers working in Minnesota to keep the roads safe. The reality that is not the case. And so the challenge for us is finding out if there is a group assembled, discovering if they are intending on going to the freeway, and then making the decision about how we allocate resources, calling troopers in for something that might happen, calling troopers in after the freeway is breached, knowing that it takes time. And then at the same time, like I've testified, keeping that road safe for everyone involved, establishing detour routes with DOT, and then also doing our absolute best to hold people accountable for an action that I've said many times is extremely dangerous. And just one comment, because I think it just bears repeating. My organization, the State Patrol, what we've said all along, long before the tanker incident on that Sunday night, was there are many, many places for people to exercise their First Amendment rights, and we're your people to facilitate that. There are many places to do that. The freeway is not one of those places. And the reason why is it's extremely dangerous, and the freeway system is designed to be open. It is not designed to be closed, ever, especially on a very short notice event. It just fundamentally isn't designed to be used that way. And so for those reasons, it creates an extremely dangerous environment.
Commissioner?
Mr. Chair, I'm in 100% agreement with Colonel Langer. We do not believe the place to exercise First Amendment rights is the highway system. There are many other places. There are places people can receive permits. And to Senator Lang's point, it is always a joint response in that case. And most of the time, we are taking direction from the patrol to maintain that traffic safety mission. It was highly unusual during the period of civil unrest in terms of the deployment that evening, because of the stretched nature of law enforcement. But that, I 100% agree. And I believe the governor and lieutenant governor 100% agree that it is not the place to exercise your First Amendment rights because of what we saw on that Sunday night.
Follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess at this point, you talked about mass arrests, and I know that you were stretched thin shortly after the civil unrest. And since the two incidents that happened since that time frame, the number of people on the bridge was obviously much less. How many people were arrested? And I know this is probably a tough question when it comes to mutual aid between you, the National Guard, and the Minneapolis Police Department, but roughly speaking, how many people were arrested, and what is the penalty for that?
Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair and Senator Lang, in terms of that Sunday night, and I don't know if that was the focus of your question, but in terms of that Sunday night, there were about 224 arrests and citations that occurred in what people saw in the big encirclement that occurred after the freeway breach in the area of 35W in Washington. That was because we had literally hundreds of resources that we could put toward it to do that really well. We don't have that on any given night. We just don't, even with mutual aid. And so the honest reality of, any given Friday night is we can get resources here. It takes some time, and we work as fast as we can to do that. But the accountability that we're able to do without having our mobile field force and all that goes into that to have a safe mass arrest is a lot more complicated. So the enforcement action that we take after the fact is less than if we have mobile field force, but it still occurs. The penalties can range from walking on the freeway as a petty misdemeanor. That's different than an unlawful assembly or a public nuisance crime or all the way up to felony riot. So it kind of runs the spectrum, but walking on the freeway in and of itself is illegal, and so it doesn't require dispersal warnings and an ability for folks to leave, because the act of walking onto the freeway as it's signed at every entrance ramp is illegal right there.
Thank you,
You
Mr.
have another question, Senator Lang?
Yeah, I'll ask a really complicated one to end this up. When it comes to de-incentivizing people to stay off the roadways, there's a couple of questions that I want to ask. And one of those is, between your two departments, you guys being the leader of your two departments, what are you doing to stop this? Because it's been more and more common. When it comes to the two most recent ones, how many were arrested? Is there something that your department is doing SOP-wise, standard operating procedure, so you're going to come up and you're going to say, listen, we need to quell this before it gets started. We need to increase penalties. Is there something that us as a legislature can do to help your two departments to keep people off the roadways, to keep those people in areas where their First Amendment rights can be exercised freely and non-dangerously? What do we do as a legislature to help you do that? Is it increasing penalties? Is that it? Because I think we've seen movement, through the House more than what the Senate has been, but through the House to move that way. I guess I'd like to get both of your opinions on whether or not that's an effective measure, if it's policies within both departments, if it's something that we do to keep people off the roadways, or is it something where, and I think more of a reactive nature would be, and safely speaking, I think it's the right decision to make when you're crunched for time to quell the flow of traffic, but I think that the thing is we as a state is need to keep those people off the roadways. So how do we do that?
Commissioner.
Well, Mr. Chair, I would say that is a question for the legislature, and we have not recommended any changes. The penalties can range quite severely depending on what your intent is as the person on that roadway. And, if you are doing a criminal activity, you can be charged with a very serious crime. So if we ever saw something like a number of years ago happened, I believe, was that in the Atlanta area, where there was a shooter who used, Virginia, who used the highways as their methodology to move around and to shoot at people. I think you're going to be charged with something very serious, usually a felony. If you are out there as a protester, we are going to work with our law enforcement partners to get those people off the road as quickly as possible and let them make the decision on what level of charge to make. That has, our MnDOT maintenance and operations staff are hardworking people. There are over 2,000 of them. They are your neighbors, and they are not law enforcement officers. I want to remind you of that. And so I don't have a recommendation for you. That has to be something you would look at.
Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Lang, I think it's a really difficult question to answer because it plays into the psychology of the group and the psychology of the individual. And I think the reality is that some people are enticed toward certain penalties and others are deterred from it. What I can offer is what I hear from people that just think about this logically. No one should get hurt exercising their First Amendment right. I've never heard anybody think that they should. And so if that's our common belief, then stay off the freeway when you're doing that. That's the easiest way to stay safe. And so I'm all ears. Best practices, I know nationwide. I had a conference call with the North Central region of state and provincial police. This is an issue all over the country, and I'm not aware of anyone, anybody, any legislature, any state patrol, highway patrol, state police who has figured out how to solve this problem. But it's one that we are definitely eager to do the best we can at preventing it at all costs, because it's extremely dangerous.
Okay, members, I'm beginning to watch the clock because Colonel Langer has got a hard deadline at 11:30, and I would ask members to just kind of keep that in mind. And we have a number of members who still have got questions. Senator Ingebretson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank both you, Commissioner and Colonel, for being here today. I'll go real quickly here. Colonel, has the officers ever been delayed getting to a location related to a public safety incident that calls for service because of protesters blocking a freeway that you can recall?
Colonel Langer.
Then I have another follow-up, please.
Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Ingebretson, I don't have any evidence of that, but they're no different than the motoring public. So I'm certain that, they've had to think quickly and move around those routes on occasion.
Senator Ingebretson.
I think my other question, thank you, Mr. Chair, is that what's not been mentioned here, first of all, I spent a lot of time backing up the State Patrol on the freeway, and it is a very dangerous place to work. I've always said that. People just simply don't slow down. And so it takes a lot of people power out there, lots of lights to slow people down. There was this thing at one time that if people say don't put so many lights on because you scare people, they're going to hit the brakes and go in the ditch. I mean, it's really, you have to be looking over your shoulder at all times. And I certainly appreciate that. One thing that's not mentioned, though, when you talk about the extreme amount of people that you have to motivate for these types of things here, particularly in the metro, you're pulling from the suburbs, I'm assuming. You're pulling from every available resource that you have under your command. That creates a vacuum, and I don't think people understand that. So if there's an accident in a suburb, if there's a bad crash on, I don't know my suburb, 394 and 94, a long ways away from the scene, or even down in the Bloomington area, Bloomington police are going to have to respond to that, correct? Or the sheriff or somebody else that's available, because you're going to have your units up taking care of this event. So I think if you could just comment on what that's certainly an issue, because if you take that Bloomington police officer, or two or three, whatever it takes to secure the scene and investigate that accident, now the rest of the city is going unpatrolled. So it's just an ongoing issue. And I don't think the general public realizes that all the resources are coming to one small area. That means somebody else is not going to be served. Is that a fair assessment?
Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Ingebretson, that's absolutely fair. And I would point out from our perspective as a State Patrol two things. Number one, when these situations occur, we are indebted to the local police departments and the sheriff's offices that help us both at that incident when they respond under mutual aid, but also handling the calls for service that might happen elsewhere. And although we can give examples of crashes or other things, the other people that aren't getting the service they need are the ones that get a flat tire or that run out of gas, and all the other many non-enforcement actions where the State Patrol is there to help. And those people, I think, deserve service just as much as the speeding driver who gets pulled over and cited for their behavior.
Senator Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and you too. Nice to see both of you. Thanks for being here. I think my question's probably been answered. One of the questions I had was of mutual support. I hear, Chief, that you're having to pull in troopers from all over, but it sounds though like that you also use mutual support. If you've got a major problem on the freeway, you call in St. Paul or Minneapolis or whatever to come help you with that. Is that correct?
Langer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Hall, it's definitely a team effort.
Okay, and my other question, I think, sounds like you don't keep necessarily track of all the emergency vehicles that are delayed because of something like that happens on the freeway, where people get on the freeway and they stop, and then you have to go around the traffic to get there, or you get caught on the freeway. I don't think you keep track of that, or how much time is wasted or delayed in getting to an emergency with an emergency vehicle.
Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Hall, we don't have data that would quantify
Right,
that.
that's all I had. Thank you.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you both for coming in. You know, this is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. When a few years back, my daughter was actually terrorized by an incident during one of these incidences in the past. And so, Colonel Langer, I guess I got two questions, and I'm asking them at the same time. Have you received any instructions as far as allowing these protests to occur, or on how to handle those protesters and the consequences they should receive? Have you received any instructions on to allow these, or how to handle those protesters in the future?
Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Howe, in my position as chief, no. I believe that this is well within my authority to take care of and to handle as I see fit, for the reasons that I've described, because it's extremely dangerous, and I've yet to have anyone disagree with me that it's extremely dangerous for this to occur.
Thank you.
Senator Yazinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Commissioner and Colonel, thank you for being here again, as everyone said. And I've been fortunate enough to spend an evening up in Trooper 8. I've toured the RTMC, so I'm familiar with what you guys are doing, and I really enjoy that, and thank you for allowing me to take those opportunities. And mine follows along with kind of the same questions of, you know, it seems like it's, as Colonel Langer says, it seems to be a normal now of, not a normal, but we don't want it to become a normal. And it just seems with recent events, it seems like it's almost giving people implicit permission to do this, and I want to make sure that we don't continue that on, and I know we tried in 17 to change some things, and it fall on deaf ears of changing how we would do and how we'd penalize those. So I guess just a comment, I just hope you continue to push for the administration to prevent this from happening and do whatever we can do to stop this. Again, I think of a small child in a car that would come across a protest or something like that, how that would scare them, or how it would delay a first responder or a firefighter or something like that in the highway system and around the metro. So, and also another concern is, as someone brought up, I think Senator Ingebrigtsen, what it does if you have to do mutual response to that, to get to that, what it opens up in another area. So again, I want to comment that I think it's a concern, and I think it's something we should take very seriously and hope that we can promote this not from becoming a normal in the future. So thank you again for both being here.
Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Most of my questions have been answered, but you just said that this is well within your wheelhouse, Colonel Langer. So what are the changes to the plans for the events that are happening in the future now? Have there been some modifications there? And what can we look forward to going forward?
Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Johnson, so really the number one solution, and I'm not here advocating for anything. The reality is the number one solution to these events is resources. You just have to have the people at the drop of a hat to be ready. But there's not always a great idea looking into the future about when these events are going to occur. And so kind of what I've said other places, I can always tell you the day after how many troopers we should have had working an incident the day before, and it's always either we had too many or not enough. We tried our best to hit the right amount, but it doesn't always work. So what we're doing right now, and we have been doing for quite some time, is we staff up when we think that there's going to be an issue. And even when we staff up, we try to be reasonable and calculated, because many times it never comes to fruition. And so we do our best to look into many times what feels like a crystal ball and rely on our gut and our experience and any intelligence that we might get on open source to figure out how many resources we might have. But I mean, the goal for us is to prevent it from happening in the first place. The reality is that's not all that successful, because most groups aren't going to tell us, hey, we're assembling downtown St. Paul, and at 8 o'clock we're going to step off and we're going to block the freeway. I wish that was the case, because it would make our job for planning a lot easier. I also respect the groups for why they don't want to do that. That goes against their desire to make the statement they wish to make. So long-winded answer to say, Senator Johnson, the number one tool that we have to either prevent or respond for us is Minnesota State Troopers on the ground.
Senator Johnson. Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Colonel Langer. Thank you, Margaret Kelleher Anderson, for coming today. Appreciate the opportunity to discuss the issue of May 31st. And I thought I heard earlier that there was, maybe Colonel Langer, you said this, you guessed there was probably approximately 1,500 people on the bridge. Is that, did I hear that, or was I listening to something else?
Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair and Senator Anderson, I don't know if I've said, it was at least 1,500 in and around U.S. Bank Stadium. It was a very, very large group, but I would never want to be quoted on my skill at crowd estimation.
Okay.
Senator Anderson.
Well, 1,500 people is a lot of people, and if you think it was more than that, then it's really a concerning thing to see a tanker trucker, as many have mentioned already, coming down on a group of people, and how many people could have been easily hurt or injured because of that. Colonel Langer, do you know if that tanker truck was empty of fuel, or did it still have fuel in it?
Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Anderson, so immediately I was concerned that it was loaded. I don't know how DOT did this, but in amazing speed, they were able to confirm for us that it was not loaded.
It was not loaded. That's a plus. One more thought here. You know, we've had these situations happen in the past 3, 4, 5, 6 years. I think Senator Howe mentioned something about his daughter being traumatized or almost terrorized because of protesters. And I'm just wondering what, because of the potential that could have happened here with the protesters on the bridge, and had a tragedy happened, where, as we go forward, and realizing that we've had this on 694 in the past, and we've had it out at the airport and things like that, and you've mentioned that you don't know the strategy or the wherewithal to stop this, but if a protest starts and begins, what is in the back of your mind as the head of State Highway Patrol, and the back of Commissioners, your mind as we look at these protests, because we've had them in the past, just within the past 5, 6 years. Is there anything going on in your departments that are trying to gear up or come up with a strategy to go forward with something to head this off before it gets to what happened on May 31st?
Colonel Langer.
So, Mr. Chair, Senator Anderson, I don't know that I can answer that any better than I already have, but so we're 24/7. We have dispatchers working 24/7. They have phenomenal access to cameras all around the freeway system, and so the communication with our local partners is good, and we try to track these groups and sort of get a feel for it. And sometimes we'll be on the phone with someone at St. Paul PD who says, geez, I checked with the group. They're going to march up University and come around the Capitol. They're going to end up at point X. We don't think they're going on the freeway. Other times we'll have a group that says, or a local agency will say, geez, we can't even get the group organizers to respond to us. They won't even, we don't know what they're going to do. And then other times after the fact, like we did on Friday night, we had one of our majors that was able to find a few what we believe to be leaders in the Oromo community, and we said, you need to stop going on the freeway. It's extremely dangerous. And have that conversation after the fact. We don't know if the people we talked with were actually on the freeway or not, but we tried to establish a rapport and some influence to explain why this is really dangerous and it needs to stop. Now, some people, that's all it takes, and others, it takes much more than that, but we try everything we can. Let's be honest, we'd much rather enforce the traffic laws. that would be our beautiful Friday night, as we're out there helping people enforcing the traffic laws. This is quite honestly the last thing that we want to do as an organization, because it isn't allowing us to be proactive and successful toward our mission of overall traffic safety. But when it happens, it absolutely becomes the priority, whether we want it to or not.
And one last question.
Senator Andrews.
I know that I talked to my sheriff in Wright County, and he said that he had 15 of his deputies called. I'm not sure who called them, but I'm wondering how many other agencies or other county sheriffs or police departments had been called in, and by who?
Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Anderson, we have some data that we can supply after the fact. I believe that Commissioner Harrington testified it was upwards of 80 agencies in total responded that we have documentation. We're involved with the period of civil unrest in Minneapolis, which I think is a different question than the actual freeway closures.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And sorry I'm coming back around with another question, but some of the discussion here. But Colonel Langer, it sounded like you said you need more troopers. What are the current impediments? Because I know the last recruiting class, you were looking for 31, 32 troopers, and you got like 22. What's the impediments to you being able to recruit those, what I would hope are the best of the best?
Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Howe, so our job, and we've been successful thanks to previous legislative appropriations, is to have a State Patrol Academy every single year. That allows us to recruit, hire, and then train and get out on the road state troopers, because we hire once a year in an academy setting that we absolutely believe in. And have ever since the State Patrol was founded in 1929. And so every year we have an academy if we have the appropriation and funds able to do so, and that allows us to hire the positions of state trooper to backfill behind retirements, resignations, and people leaving for a variety of reasons. And so my job is to tirelessly advocate for the State Patrol to hire as many state troopers as I can within our appropriation, because that is the #1 way that we're successful toward our traffic safety mission. As for recruitment, a variety of issues are involved with that. Some people are born into a family of state troopers, and that's all they ever wanted to do their entire life, and nothing else matters. Other people catch the bug or catch interest at other points in their life. Some folks see it and are recruited by way of Lido out of other professions because something deep inside them is calling them toward law enforcement, and they've been stuck in a job that they thought they might have wanted to do but didn't want to do. But in my experience, what we're looking for are people that believe in who we are as a State Patrol, believe in what we're trying to accomplish, believe in traffic safety, and want to be part of the team. We have a difficult time convincing someone of that. We like to have them believe within themselves that this is where they want to go, because it's all for the right reasons. And of course, the normal stuff that everybody talks about with recruiting is in play, of course. There's pay, there's the academy environment, there's where am I going to live, there's health and benefits and retirement. But we focus a lot at the State Patrol both on intrinsic and extrinsic parts of the motivation.
Senator Senjum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to both of our guests for being here today. Thank you for his service to the state of Minnesota. So maybe just a question. I remember vividly in 2008 standing in my apartment balcony over here and looking down at the John Ireland Bridge. And the protesters had blocked that. And what I recall is 2 or 3 MnDOT snow plows with their blades down, making their way across the bridge, and the protesters had a couple of choices, either to move on or jump over the bridge and onto Highway 94. Probably not a good choice, but that took care of that particular incident, and it was a show to see from my perspective. But maybe more seriously, this is, I think generally speaking, and in the kind of tongue we speak in southeast Minnesota, people are sick and tired of this, absolutely sick and tired of this. They put up with this kind of conduct, especially if you're on a freeway, if you're blocked. And maybe a couple of questions to that effect. if you've got a blocked freeway, I'm going to say it can't be more than 10 or 15 minutes, and you've got a 10-mile backup of cars on that freeway. Without CB radios anymore, I'm not sure. You can't probably tell off a cell phone what's going on up there. But people are sitting on the freeway. They're probably believing it's a car accident. They're willing to put up with that a little bit. But certainly if they find out if it's protest, they're going to get angry themselves. But Colonel Langer, from the standpoint of the patrol, what do you do with those cars that are maybe 10 miles backed up on the freeway? How is there a mechanism for those people to know, as frustrated they are at the moment, what to do, how to get off the freeway, or do they do that naturally? Are people making U-turns on the freeway and backtracking up an exit, or how does that all work?
Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Senjum, all good points. Exactly why I said the freeway system is not designed to be closed on short notice for all of those reasons, because it leaves folks many times entirely confused. Even if they know the area, if they're stuck between two ramps and traffic is actually stopped, there's nowhere to go. Because the local routes aren't designed to take that type of volume off of the main line. And so back to that coordinated response with DOT that occurs at least in the metro area in our TMC specifically, it's all of those things need to be taken into consideration because we don't want motorists to be frustrated any more than they already are at a route being suddenly closed that they had planned on being open. And all I can do is, with those citizens who I hear from frequently on those issues, I say I absolutely agree with you. We're equally frustrated. We didn't intend for the road to be closed at all, nor as long as it took to clear it in these incidents. And I think that MnDOT would say the same thing because, again, our goal is to keep the road open and safe and not have it closed any longer than absolutely necessary. And protest events, in my opinion, are not a necessary reason for the road to be closed.
Okay.
Senator Senjum.
And just to maybe follow up, we all grew up learning discipline, and usually from our parents. If it was casual discipline, if there was no discipline, we did it again, even though it was wrong. If there was casual discipline, we maybe thought about it a little bit more, maybe did it, maybe didn't. If it was harsh discipline, we didn't do it again. What if, and I would ask both of you this, what if there was harsh discipline? We can talk about what that means. But what if at least maybe 10 of those 150 or 1,500 protesters or whatever did incur some harsh discipline? And I'm not sure if that's 6 months in jail or whatever, but word gets around. If you do this, there are consequences. What if the legislature came up with something along the lines of harsh discipline for at least a portion of these people to try to put people on notice? If you do this, there are consequences, and it might be you. Would, in fact, do you believe, maybe a question for each one of you, would you support the legislature along the lines of some degree of harsh discipline for people that do this?
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, I respectfully defer the question. That is really a question for the legislature. We are in the business of building, maintaining, and keeping highways safe. And so I just have to say that I think that we have been clear that it is not a place to be. You should not be on the highway. You should not be on the highway on foot, on bike. It is illegal. Please don't do it. There are penalties already, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to defer the question to Colonel Langer.
Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair, I just say,
Senator Senjum.
our wonderful commissioner is a commissioner. If this question were to come up, the governor is going to probably look for some advice in terms of how he handles this from the standpoint of a legislative veto or some other conversation he might have. So I respect that you're probably not going to answer this one today, and maybe it's not a fair answer to the question of the colonel either, but I think it's an important question. At what point are the consequences so harsh that in fact this doesn't happen again? There is a point where I think we all know that would be true to some great degree. And I think we need to look at consequences, or we're simply going to have this, maybe as Senator Jasinski has said, on a repeated basis. We can't make this a casual kind of occurrence. We have to, society has to say that enough is enough, This is not acceptable. We're going to, as a society, as a legislature, as a state of Minnesota, if you do this, you're going to have to, in fact, take the risk of suffering harsh consequences. And maybe I'll just leave my point there. Maybe not fair to ask the law enforcement agent what he thinks about consequences. If he has thoughts, that's fair, but I just wanted to make this point. Until and unless we, in fact, get serious about this, I think legislatively we're going to see more of it.
The Commissioner has responded, and Colonel Langer, you may respond if you wish. It sounds like the question was withdrawn, but you may respond if you wish.
No, Mr. Chair, I think I'll not respond other than to just remind people that fundamentally law enforcement is the gatekeeper to the system. We are not the criminal justice system. And so this question is also one that needs to put before those that would have prosecuting authority in these cases too, because to make an arrest or write a ticket is just the beginning. The accountability question, which I think is what Senator Senjum is raising, is much bigger than just a question for law enforcement as the gatekeeper to the criminal justice system.
Okay, thank you. We have one final senator that wishes to ask a question. And Senator Dzik, I realize you were a little bit late. I'm not sure if you were aware of the announcement I made that Colonel Langer has to leave at 11:30. So, okay. Senator Dzik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you both for being here today, especially you, Colonel Langer. I know you've been here several days, joined us, so we appreciate that. Earlier, Senator Howe asked about the state trooper academies and the need for more trooper, and I just want to clarify. Did I hear you say that you were about 31 troopers short, or did you have a number?
Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Dzik, I appreciate the question. So for us, it's like folklore to say, you know, what's your complement of state troopers? There's nothing in the law that requires us to have X number of state troopers. My job, I believe my job, is to hire as many state troopers. And of course, we have wonderful dispatchers, support staff, Capitol security officers, commercial vehicle inspectors. It's not just about the troopers, but they're the bulk of our agency, and they're the ones that are tasked with the bulk of our mission. And they wouldn't be successful with those others, but there's not a number. And so we hire as many as we can. In some academies, we have more than enough applicants that we deem to be viable. In those years, that's great. In other years, it's much more difficult. Recently, it's been more difficult than, of course, many years ago and even some years ago. But right now, today, our goal would be to have an academy next year that would allow us to fill all the vacant positions that we currently have. And I think many members are aware that we do have a supplemental budget request in the governor's supplemental budget that is alive, and I've been advocating for it, as have many others, because I believe really strongly in our state we need state troopers all over the state. And although much of this conversation has occurred around civil unrest and protesters in the metro area, the troopers that we have working in greater Minnesota and all other corners of the state are critical as well.
Follow up.
Senator Dzik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, can you refresh my memory? Was there a request in last year's budget? So this wasn't a budget year, supplemental budget, but in last year's budget request, did you request and get additional funding for a trooper academy or any of the trooper pay raises? And I think we've even had stuff on trooper salary reviews. And then, so do you have a trooper academy this year or one planned for next year, or is any of this what is dependent on that supplemental budget?
Colonel Langer.
Mr. Chair and Senator Dzik, I could go back in the history but to answer it more thoroughly, but I'll answer it this way. As we stand here right now today without the supplemental budget, we won't be having an academy in 2021.
Senator Franzen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here at testifiers again, for enlightening us with some of the insight of what went on in that day when we had to close our roads and freeways, which is unprecedented and certainly not taken lightly. I just wanted to comment, Senator Newman, Mr. Chair, with Senator Senjum's question. You know, I'm an attorney, and we hate hypotheticals because, you know, things can change and factors change all the time. So what I came to mind when I heard Senator Senjum speaking, you know, this is not the only obstruction to our state highways and road system. People take their lives sometimes in some of our roadways, and you have to deal with that. So I'm thinking, you know, if we had incidents that kept happening in the same bridge, in the same roadway, we wouldn't be trying to find out how to enforce the law and be more, to use Senator Senjum's word, harsh discipline. We would be talking about why are people doing that? Why there and why to begin with? And that's, again, what I think we should be thinking about. Why are people protesting? Why are they taking to the streets literally? And that's been absent in the hour and a half that we've been in testimony today. Why are people taking those personal sacrifices and consequences? Because they are. There were over, they mentioned 224 citations. I remember seeing them on TV overnight, and they were done peacefully. And for the most part, these protests were peaceful protests. And they lined up and waited to be processed. We saw that in the news. So the people who are rioters and who are instigators and arsonists, we haven't been talking about that in this hearing. We're talking about those peaceful protests that they took to the streets because they wanted their actions to be heard by Minnesotans. And I don't disagree, that's not the best place for civil unrest and protests. But let's talk about why they chose to do that in the first place. And I commend all the public servants and all the troopers and all the police and everyone who handled this, because there were 0 deaths that we know of that were reported, and no one got seriously injured. That's commendable. We were lucky, and again, it's a miracle that that happened. But let's talk about, why are people taking to the streets? Why are they fine with putting their lives at risk and having a public record that's going to ruin their careers potentially for the rest of their lives, because that will be on their records? Because they need to be heard, and we need to listen. So we're talking about enhancing penalties and locking people up. Well, we're going to need a lot of resources, because I believe your budget, Colonel, is $9 million a year, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to need more troopers. We're going to need more places to put people who are protesting. If you want to lock them up for 6 months, like Senator Senjum suggested, I know that was a hypothetical, but and what are the consequences to that? Are we going to fix the core issue? So members, I appreciate that we're having this inquisition over the last several days, trying to figure out how to prepare for the next incident. But let's talk about, how do we avoid it? How do we avoid another killing of a black man that actually happened on a public street by a public servant? How do we avoid that? Then we don't have to plan for more resources, and we don't have to plan for more hardening of our streets. We need to bring public trust. But if we're not talking about the elephant in the room, that's never going to happen, members. So thank you for being here, and I'm supportive of your supplemental budget. My father-in-law worked in the state trooper in Little Falls, so he's been in the courthouse when there's been shootings. So I commend your work and the sacrifice you do every day. Where you think it's going to be peaceful, you never know, and you have to be prepared. And without the resources, we're putting you at risk. So thank you for coming here again and again and doing the job to serve and protect our public.
We have been and are talking about the riots and the arson and the vandalism and the looting and the criminal activity that occurred beginning on May 26th. There is a time, and I do support, when we have a discussion on what Senator Franzen has alluded to. But that is not the purpose of this hearing, never has been. And there are good reasons why we as a legislature should talk about criminal activity that our law enforcement and our state agencies have to deal with. And that is why we are here. And we will have that other discussion at a different time. Commissioner, thank you very much for coming in today. We really do appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And the explanation that you have provided to us. Colonel Langer, always a pleasure to see you. You have given us a great deal of your time in the immediate past, and I just want you to know that we really do appreciate it. And it is, Colonel Langer, 11:30.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate it, and I do appreciate the support. And the support of me is one thing, but the support of the state troopers that are on the road, that's what matters. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We are now going to go to the next issue on our agenda, and that is an issue that we are going to discuss with the Minneapolis police in dealing with the riots. We have with us 3 police officers, Officer Cheryl Schmid, Officer Anna Hedberg, and Officer Rich Walker. And I would invite all 3 officers to come to the testifying table at this time. Thank you very much for coming. I think to begin with, I'm simply going to ask you each in turn to identify yourselves. Who is your employer and what is your rank? Whoever wishes to go first is fine with me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Cheryl Schmidt. I'm a sergeant with the Minneapolis Police Department. I've been on the force for 23 years, spent the first 16 years of my career as a 911 responder and directed patrol officer on the city's north side. Got promoted and spent 4.5 years working juvenile sex trafficking investigations. Currently, I'm assigned to the police union. I'm the vice president of the union, and that's my full-time assignment right now.
Thank you, Sergeant. And Officer Hedberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Anna Hedberg. I'm a sergeant with the Minneapolis Police Department.
Get right into the mic, please. There you go.
All right. Sorry about that. I've been an officer for 14 years with the Minneapolis Police Department. 10 years was with the North Side working 911 patrol. Then I got promoted and I was a supervisor in the Northeast precinct, 2nd precinct, and I am currently also full-time with the union. I'm a director on the board.
And your rank is that of sergeant?
Yes, sir.
Officer Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Richard Walker, Sr. I'm currently a Minneapolis police officer, have been for just shy of 16 years. I spent almost 10 years of patrol on all 3 shifts in our 4th precinct, which is outside in North Minneapolis. And in 2014, I joined the gun investigation unit where we investigate gun-related crimes in our city. And I'm also a 5-year board member of our federation.
And your rank?
I'm just an officer, sir.
Officer. Well, thank you very much to all 3 of you for coming. I will say that, you know, I think the people in the state of Minnesota, you know, watched on TV the rioting that went on. I think it really began on about May 26th, and that's what we want to talk about today. They watched video regarding riots and arson and vandalism and, you know, just outright criminal activity. I have seen reports or read reports of shots being fired at law enforcement during those riots. The scenes that we see as just civilians, just watching it on TV, they're just really frightening. They're really frightening. And police officers get into the front line and you are confronted with dealing with very large crowds of people. Some of the folks in those crowds may be peaceful protesters, I don't know, but some of them are certainly engaged in criminal activity that is exceedingly dangerous. And, you know, we know that, you know, cops have got families, wives, children. You however, have chosen a career path that is a little different than a lot of us, which takes you directly into harm's way at times. But nevertheless, I don't think that police officers are immune from fear, anxiety, just the normal human reaction to being confronted with danger. I don't think you're immune from any of that. So the reason why I've asked you to come in and talk to us today is I would like you as individual police officers to tell us from your standpoint, in your own words, what is your mindset when you are faced with the type of rioting or the riots that you were faced with beginning on May 26th? I'd like to know whether or not you have got the necessary tools and support in order to deal with the riots that you were faced with. And most importantly, I would like you to tell us legislators, and maybe even more importantly, tell the general public. You know, I live out in rural Minnesota, for instance. The people that I represent, they're not real familiar with what you went through. So I want to invite you to talk to the people of the state of Minnesota and tell them what you went through in order to help us understand. And I will begin in any order that you wish, whoever wishes to go first. But that's the purpose. Is I want to talk about the riots and how you as police officers were engaged in and handled those riots. Who would like to go first? Officer Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I get started, I just want to say we appreciate you guys having us here. The world witnessed what happened in our metro area. I believe that what we need to do is to seriously examine what happened. It affects me personally. I'm born and raised in Frogtown, which those of you know is not very far from here. So the community that I was born and raised in was also destroyed. So I am a Minneapolis police officer, but I have family that lives not even a mile from here. I used university as a young boy. My very first job was McDonald's right here at the corner. So it stings a little different when you watch your neighborhood that you grew up in destroyed. To answer your question, Mr. Chairman, I believe we have the tools if they're utilized, if we're authorized to be used to circumvent and stop what happened. I believe the real question, sir, is were we allowed to do it, and were our leaders allowing us to do our job? And I'm here to tell the truth and the whole truth. And the truth is, the leaders of Minneapolis failed Minneapolis.
Officer Hedberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Officer Walker said, thank you for.
I'm going to ask you to get right into that mic.
Just get right in there. Sorry about that again. Thank you again for having us and giving us the opportunity to speak. You had several questions. One was how it really affected us during those riots and what was our general feelings and the way that the department actually responded to the riots. Just to be perfectly clear, during the riots, I was not at the 3rd Precinct. There was, I probably was there for a couple hours on Wednesday, and then again, I was there on Thursday as well. But as far as Thursday night, I was not there. I was actually in the command post. So I got to watch it just like everybody else on video, and I got to experience just being unable to respond and to help my fellow officers. To watch them go through that was so heartbreaking. To know that they could have died because we were not allowed to respond the way that we have been trained to respond to these situations. To hear our leadership talk about that we're using too many munitions, too much gas, it looks bad. Let's just give them the precinct, it's just brick and mortar. That's not what we stand for. And to watch 54 cops run for their lives from that precinct when the protesters knew that we were giving up that precinct before we did, because they had a barrage of bricks and Molotov cocktails and fireworks planted outside of Arby's. They knew we were going to be fleeing that place before we did. Somebody told them. We didn't know, but they did. So there's so much video out there, so much Twitter video, so much Facebook video of those officers being attacked. Everything that you've heard with officers inside that precinct on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, this might be my last night. I might not come home. Tell my kids I love them. That's all true. Every single bit of it is true. I'm going to save a bullet for myself because I don't want to get taken by these protesters, these rioters. That's all true. Yesterday, Sergeant Schmidt and I spent the entire day talking to 3rd Precinct officers. The entire day. And not one of them was short of tears. They are lost. They don't know if they can go to work. Their children are lost. When you have a 10-year-old son who cannot talk to their father because they're going to work, in tears, that really shakes the core of the family. So I kind of went off on a tangent there, I'm sorry, but that's what the riots were like. And you asked about, Mr. Chair, about officers being shot at. There was a particular day, the National Guard actually got trapped on Hiawatha. They took a wrong turn because our transportation for the National Guard was the Metro Transit buses. I mean, we are this great state, and this is what our plan was to load up a bunch of National Guardsmen in Metro Transit buses. And they took a wrong turn. And then they got trapped. And then it was the Minneapolis police officers that had to go in and rescue them. And they got shot at 15 times from that bridge. We are so lucky that they didn't get killed. And there was no response. None. And to watch those officers and those supervisors come into the command post, and I've worked with them for 14 years, they were besides themselves. I mean, they showed great restraint to those people in the command post. If it were me, I probably would have lost my mind. But to hear it on the radio, to watch it on Trooper 7 or Trooper 8, to watch it unfold and be so helpless. Sorry.
Thank you, Sergeant. Thank you very much. Sergeant Schmidt.
Like my colleague said, this has been a very, very difficult experience for our department, for our state, for the officers that had to, that were in the middle of all of this. I was at a command post, just like Sergeant Hedberg was, so I was watching it on the cameras. I was hearing people screaming for resources and not getting them. And then, like Sergeant Hedberg said, yesterday we spent the day, well, I shouldn't say that, every day that this was going on, and every day since then, I have talked to probably hundreds of officers about their experiences there and how they felt the department and the leadership of our city left them out there with no direction, no plan on how to deal with anything. I was with a cop last week, and all I said to him was, "How are you doing?" Broke down in tears, and he says, "My department left me in there to die." And he texted his wife and saying he thought he was going to die that night. Very, very hard things to hear from your cops. And yeah, it was a very difficult situation. And we heard a lot of stories yesterday with these from our officers that were in the front lines or assigned to the precincts or various tasks during that operational time.
Thank you, Sergeant. Senator Ingebretson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, officers, for being brave to come here. And Sergeant Hedberg, you got nothing to be ashamed of at all. These are tough situations. These are situations that aren't supposed to happen in Minnesota. I was a law enforcement officer myself for 34 years. I can't imagine how it would feel to listen to my fellow officers crying for more help or hollering for more help or not getting directions. But I do have a couple of questions, Mr. Chair, if I could, and whoever could answer these would certainly help. And Patrolman Walker, it makes me feel good that somebody from within the community that looked up to police that went into the profession. My dad was a sheriff, and by golly, guess what? I was going to be one myself, and I cared about things, and I really appreciate that. I just had to say that, and I'm afraid that's not going to happen too much anymore. During the last week of May, what types of crimes did you see? I mean, you're talking about terrible things that are happening, but can you tell me about what kinds of crimes were being committed against the officers and the public during that time?
Officer Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, the crimes that are happening against officers, they're very easily to speak about because we're also seeing them on the news. We have had close to 20 homicides in the city of Minneapolis since Memorial Day. We've had upwards of 140 people shot in our city since Memorial Day, including a murder that just happened yesterday. We're averaging 2 to 3 shootings a day, and that message is not out there. That message is the crime is rampant in Minneapolis right now. It is lawlessness over there, and the criminals are emboldened right now to do whatever they want to do. Open air drug selling, gun violence, clearly, robberies, assaults. It's almost every 20 minutes appears. The crimes that are, I'm sorry,
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Senator Engelbrecht.
And I'll let you elaborate on that, I think, but specifically in May, in the last week of May, talk about the incidents that we're here about today. And I know what's happened since then. Everybody has. If they don't admit to that, they're all burying their head in the sand. But talk about specifically when the riots were going on. What kind of crimes were being perpetrated against the folks that you are there to protect, as well as yourselves in uniform?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for going.
No, you don't have to apologize for anything.
Well, I can tell you from my experience, I was out there the first day, Wednesday, from 4 p.m. until 3 in the morning. I was hit with glass bottles, rocks. We believe shots were fired outside the precinct, Molotov cocktails. They even skinned 2 pig faces and threw those at us, gallons of milk. Anything that they can use with their 2 hands to throw at us was thrown at us. Bottles with cement in them. You name it, homemade projectiles to launch dangerous bottles with rocks and nails at us. Almost anything that you could hit us with, they did.
Either one of the other two to that question?
That type of violence.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm just trying to catch up. Go ahead.
That type of violence continued the entire week of the protests and riots. At some points after they activated the curfew, officers were on patrol. That was the request of Commissioner Harrington, was to go out and make the arrest for curfew. What wasn't told in the media was that even though we would go arrest people for curfew, they wouldn't actually be held in jail at all. It was a drop and just keep going. But during those active patrols, at the direction of the commissioner, was to identify people out past curfew. Officers were shot at during those times. Officer Walker alluded to everything that they could throw at us during the riots at the 3rd Precinct. They also used slingshots to launch tennis balls filled with concrete at us, striking officers repeatedly. We had several officers injured severely, went to the hospital, got stitches. I don't know if some of them have returned back to work. But as far as, I think at one point, Mr. Chairman, you had asked if we had the resources we needed to respond to this. We did, but we weren't allowed to use it. We had full, what we call turtle gear, riot gear. We saw the State Patrol showed up with theirs. We were instructed that it looked to offensive, so we were not allowed to put it on. It would have prevented injuries to officers for sure. We have officers that have complete lacerations on their shins. One officer took something of a projectile to his groin area. I don't know the status of that. And all because we just didn't want to look too aggressive.
So Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, I have to ask this. So you're saying that you weren't allowed to do this. You weren't allowed to put the turtle suits on. Where did those commands come from? Where did they not come from? What's the chain of command there?
Sergeant Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We talked to one of the precinct leadership last night. They had requested the gear and waited several hours, no response. Made the several requests for it. At some point, we're told from someone in the command center it looked too militaristic, that they were not going to use it. It was going to remain in the warehouse. And then on Saturday, they were actually allowed to go to the warehouse and retrieve that riot gear. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they went without it. And then Saturday, at some point on Saturday, they were allowed to go to the warehouse to retrieve it. We talked to several cops last night, too, that actually had their own riot gear. At one point, we were all issued our own riot gear, so some of us have riot gear. Those that had their own issued riot gear were not allowed to use it. So they had the equipment, they weren't allowed to use it.
Sergeant Hedberg.
Mr. Chair, Senator Ingebrigtsen, to clarify about the riot gear, how some officers have it and some don't. So we had the Republican National Convention back in 2008. At that point, the state, I'm assuming, funded enough for everyone on the department to receive riot gear. After the fact, we no longer got the funding to get riot gear for every class that came on. Somewhere, I think it was 2010 or 11, I'd have to look, don't quote me on that, we formulated a disaster strike team that I was actually a part of. I think it was about 50 to 75 officers as a secondary assignment. We would meet and train once every month to keep our skills up, because as we can see with our counterparts, the State Patrol, they have their own mobile field force. So that's a secondary assignment for them. They come in, they train, they know what they're doing, and they do very, very well. But funding and time and lack of resources, that disaster strike team folded. So members of that disaster strike team, to include myself, still have their turtle gear. I still have it. But that is why some officers don't have it. There are more senior officers that were on pre-2008 that have it. But to Sergeant Schmidt's point, there is a warehouse that has, maybe 7 crates of turtle gear, and it's been sitting there. But again, it was not allowed to be given to those 3rd Precinct officers that didn't have it.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Mr. Chair, and I know for a fact that the DNR was actually in turtle gear, waiting to respond, and waiting to respond to the folks out on the street that didn't have it. That's really unfortunate. I guess my next question would be, was there anything in place to prevent the rioting from spreading into the residential areas? Do you have anything at all, any plan at all? Did it get into the residential areas? I guess I don't know that.
Sergeant Hedberg.
Mr. Chair, Senator, thank you. That's a good question. On one of the nights, so I have maybe 4 or 5 different roles in the department. A secondary assignment I have is on mobile command. I'm on the tech team. So when we have what we call Operation 100s, a barricaded suspect, a suicidal mayor, what have you, I'm a member of that team. There's 10 of us on that team. And I'm also in a role that I assist with placing our mobile cameras, which are little trailers. They have a generator on them, and they pop up a little mast with a camera. So on Wednesday, I was asked to go put a mobile camera at the 3rd Precinct in front of it so we could get a good, I tell long stories. I'll get to your question. I apologize. I'll speed up. On Thursday, I believe it was Wednesday, the they all kind of just ran together. At one point, my partner and I, we decided we should go retrieve one of these cameras because they are valued at $45,000, if not more. And it was one of our last cameras on Lake Street. And I'd have to look at my notes on the time frame, but at any rate, it was the night that a lot of things were burning, to include TCF Bank. So the question was, did it spread into the residential areas? When we were driving down there to retrieve this camera, which, by the way, we were not able to because, yes, it started to spread north and south of Lake Street. I saw people that had looted Target with Target shopping carts going pushed down all the way north and south of Lake Street into the residential areas. As far as the violence and like break-ins or assaults on residents to the surrounding areas of that, I'd have to look at the actual reports if we ever got to it because of the resources that we didn't have. So I can tell you that maybe the residents, their houses weren't burned, but I can definitely tell you that there were people running all around their neighborhood up into 4 in the morning at least. So, I mean, if that answers your question, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and for now, and I've got a couple later on.
Senator Howe.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all three for coming in to testify. Would it be normal during a riot to call on other agencies, law enforcement agencies, for mutual aid, for help during a riot?
Sergeant Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely. We would need as many, especially with looking at how that situation was evolving, we needed as much help as we could get.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. And, you know, some of you've got quite a long time on the department. In your entire time working in law enforcement, have you ever heard of a mayor or a governor not requesting assistance from other agencies in a situation from what you experienced in the end of May in Minneapolis?
Sergeant Hedberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Howe, so the question is, have we ever experienced not getting mutual aid? Just so I can understand exactly.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess what I'd like to do is expound on that. If you know, there's been riots in other cities and states. In your experience in law enforcement, did those agencies not? Because we all learn, as a firefighter, we all learn from other agencies and what their experiences are. In learning from those experiences, have you ever heard of a mayor or a governor not calling for help from other agencies?
Sergeant Hedberg.
Mr. Chair, thank you. So as far as not calling for help, we did call for help, and the resources did show up. However, they were staged elsewhere, not like staged. They were told to wait elsewhere. They were never actually called upon to respond on certain evenings to assist with us. One evening I ran into an Anoka County Sheriff's deputy, and he told me he was standing by waiting to get an order to go assist, and they never did. They never got the order. So they got the request to come and help. We had agencies self-deploying to come and help us out, but they just never got direction as to where to go and when.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So normally, who would be giving them directions? I mean, for Minneapolis, who had that authority to give that mutual aid assistance that responded? Who should have they been looking to get that direction?
Well, ultimately, sir, Mr. Chair, ultimately, sir, the directive needs to come from our command staff, our chief and assistant chief, and deputy chief, and commanders in our tactical response unit. That's where that order comes from.
And thank you. And that would have been in consultation with the mayor and whoever else, I would assume.
Sergeant Hedberg.
Mr. Chair, this was a really interesting, I've been in command posts for the Super Bowl. I've been in command posts for the Final Four, X Games. All these pre-planned events, I've been in the command post, and just, understand that me talking here today, I probably won't be in the future. This is super near and dear to my heart. This needs to be talked about. These officers need to be defended and their situations be heard. So just to let you know that me sitting here today is quite nerve-wracking. But I have never experienced a situation where the mayor and the governor and the commissioner is calling the shots on how we operate our business and how we try to maintain public safety. So to find out that other agencies were standing by while our officers were getting pelted and shot at, it's infuriating. So when you ask, like, does the mayor need to step in and give that direction, quite honestly, it gets to the point where there's too many cooks in the kitchen and nobody knows what's going on.
Senator Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you know, I was quite attuned to the fire side of this thing, coming from a fire background, and it was widely reported back during the week of May 25th that Minneapolis firefighters weren't going to any of the arsons without police escorts. Can you walk me through what the normal procedures were between the fire and the police when responding to calls like that, and how that was different during the riots?
Sergeant Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So during the riots, I mean, most of the time, firefighters in Minneapolis, unless there's something active going on, they're just going to go respond to those fires, right? If there is a domestic where they need medical, they're going to wait for us to go in and take care of the situation. Now they won't even go to fires or medicals without a police escort. My husband was one of those squad cars that were attached to the fire department just so and at one point they even just quit responding to the fires and they were strictly going to medical, and that's what my husband did for I think 18 hours one day, was follow the fire trucks around as they responded to medical calls, because the firefighters were being attacked. They were trying to get their gear off of their trucks. They couldn't get into situations without having stuff thrown at them, so they needed police there so that they could go even into medical calls.
Okay.
Thank you. That's quite enlightening.
Thank you. Senator Yazinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, all three of you, for coming in. You may not know my history. I was mayor of Faribault for 8 years, and the police department was my #1 priority when I was there. You guys, what you guys do for your locality, for the state, is phenomenal, and I have nothing but utmost respect for you. I want to start with that, and I want to say thank you. I have also become a friend with a Minneapolis police officer, and has spent quite some time since this all happened, and they all talk stories, and to this day, after I ended my mayor career, I take a fishing trip with my police officers, and we go to Canada every year, and we talk, and I know I've heard stories that make me cry, and it's unbelievable what you guys do, and Sergeant Hedberg, when you talked, you brought tears to my eyes when you were telling me, and Officer Walker, the hair stood up in the back of my neck when I heard you say what you did. And I have so many questions here, and I hope a lot of them are what everybody else is thinking as well, but I have so many questions about what happened that day. And the first thing, and I know officers talk a lot, and what are you hearing from the officers who were there? What happened? What was the time frame that day that the precinct was taken down? I've heard reports that at 10 a.m. in the morning you knew it was going to fall. They sent people in to take personal property out and take pictures and those things. So any one of you can talk, but please tell me the time frame, because people want to know what happened. I mean, it baffles people what happened that day, not to see police officers there, to see no arrests, to have cameras taken down, to have body cams taken off. Please tell the story so people understand what happened that day. Any one of you, please.
Officer Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator. So on Thursday, we had a board meeting for the union, and I came in, I'll just speak for me personally, I came in at about 1:45 for our board meeting for noon, and I walked in the room, and my other 9 board members said, "Hey, did you get your stuff out of the precinct?" And I looked at him because I didn't go into work early because we had a board meeting, and I'm like, what do you mean get my stuff? He was like, did you empty your locker out? I was housed in the 3rd precinct. My investigation unit was on the 2nd floor. So we lost our home there when they burned that down. But I said, no, I didn't get my stuff out of precinct. Why? And they said, well, they're giving the precinct up. And in disbelief, I laughed. I said, yeah, okay, they're giving the precinct up. That's not something you can ask any cop who puts his badge on around this nation. They will tell you that they're ever ready to give up their house. It's a symbol to a community of safety. So I thought there's no way that our leaders, even as crazy as it seems sometimes, would be willing to give up a precinct. Because if you give up a precinct, you'll give up anything. So I was at the table and I told them no, I laughed. And they're like, no, seriously, they're giving up the precinct. You have to go get your stuff. And I looked around the table at every one of my board members in the face before I even sat down. And I'm like, are you serious? And they're like, yeah, you need to leave now. They're giving up the precinct in 2 hours. And that's at noon on Thursday. So I fled away from our federation to the precinct to empty my locker. Now, Senator, I can tell you what I felt pulling up in the parking lot and what I saw. What I saw is officers who were in complete disbelief, from a rookie officer to CSO, all the way up to the inspector of that precinct, who are in the door. I'm watching pictures being yanked off of walls, computers being unplugged, memorabilia being taken, and I've never seen anything like it. I've never been more broken as a police officer than I was to watch our leaders give up on our home. And I believe I speak for every Minneapolis cop when I tell you that I've never been more publicly humiliated to serve on a department full of leaders who thought that our building was nothing but bricks and mortar. There was more to that building. Now, they'll have to answer that to the community, but I can tell you that that is the straw that broke our department's back, for sure.
Officer Walker.
Thank you, officer.
I'm going to come back to you. I'm just curious.
Good, because I got about 10 more questions, so thank you.
I'll come back to you, Senator. Were there evidence in the 3rd precinct when it fell regarding pending criminal cases? Is that an area where that type of thing is stored?
I can tell you in our office, sir, that's absolutely the case. We have 10 investigators that were in the weapons unit who had active open cases, sensitive information in our files, in our desk spaces. All that was compromised, sir.
My apologies, Senator Yazinski. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I know officers have been talking about this because that's how you relieve stress and talk about it. So hearing your officers, what was going through their heads that day? I know you talked a lot about what you thought, but I mean, again, text to their family, what was going on. Talk a little bit about what goes through your mind when you get an order to do that far in advance of giving up your precinct, as you said.
Officer Walker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you again, Senator. I wasn't given the order, sir, and a lot of my colleagues were not given the order. There's a lot of cops that never got their stuff out of there because they weren't given the official order to abandon the precinct. The limited information or communication from our administration and our city leaders was borderline negligent on what happened in that precinct. I can tell you that the officers that were standing around, I can't say anything more than they were broken. You could see we were lost. We're a paramilitary organization. We follow orders. That's what we do. From the chief down to the rookie officer, there were no orders given to most of the cops that were there. And I wouldn't have been there had my board not told me to go empty my locker. It's a feeling that I hope I never feel again. I got almost 20 years left. I can tell you that I hope I never experience that again.
Thank you.
Senator Yazinski.
Continue on. So to have cameras removed or not to put your body cams on, orders like that were given, from what I've understand, there's been some discussion of that. To ask to stand down, Those things are not normal, and it baffles me to be in your position to have again, when I was the mayor, we couldn't always give the police everything they wanted. Obviously, there's fiscal budgets and things like that. They wanted 4 officers, we ended up giving them 3. They wanted a police dog, we got them a police dog. I mean, those tools, you need to do that, and you need a council or city council or leadership that backs up your police department. As my officers would go in behind a door not knowing what was there, showing up on a scene not knowing, and to have to go through that door not knowing if you have the backup of your leadership is heartbreaking. It's difficult, and I know there's a lot of things being talked about PTSD now, and from what I understood, talking to a couple gentlemen, there was a request for a PTSD discussion and things like that going back years ago, and had been turned down. I believe St. Paul has a PTSD group, and I think what I've heard is just recently, just before these events, there was another request and it was turned down again. Talk to me about how you as an officer feel doing your job, not getting support from the leadership behind you. And then I'll finish up and I can move it on.
Sergeant Hedberg.
Mr. Chair, Senator, I wanted to go back, if I could, to the timeline that you requested. It was one of your first questions.
Absolutely.
I mean, we could go on for probably 24 hours on that timeline, exactly with the 3rd precinct. But at 9 in the morning, I was instructed to go and remove the 3 mobile cameras that were in the back of that 3rd precinct parking lot. Another member of my tech team, he was also a day watch officer there. So he came with me. I've never loaded up a camera as fast as I could. Fortunately, I know how to drive a truck and pull the trailer. But he jumped out, grabbed a garbage bag, loaded up his stuff, and then we left as fast as we could. There was already protesters at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. And keep in mind, early on in the mornings, the protests were pretty much peaceful. You know, they were out there to have their First Amendment right to protest. But when the dark fell, that's when the rioters came out. But as far as the timeline goes, I'd have to say, you know, we were working on getting stuff out of that building. It wasn't at the direction of our chief to clean out the 3rd precinct. It was the thought that the way that this was being handled was that we wouldn't put it past our upper administration and our mayor to let that building go, because there had been conversations on Wednesday in references to that 3rd precinct of being just brick and mortar. So the feeling of those officers inside that precinct was, we're going to do what we ever can do to survive, and we don't want protesters and rioters to get our stuff and to take over. But at one point, they were instructed to have just a bare minimum of officers, maybe 9 or 10 officers in the 3rd precinct on Thursday morning, to make it appear as if we abandoned it, hoping that the protesters would just go away, or maybe at the very least give them a symbolic victory of taking the 3rd precinct. And then at some point in the day, that plan changed to, okay, we're going to try to kind of defend this precinct a little bit, but not with a whole lot of munitions, not with a whole lot of gas. We're going to try to leave the smallest amount of footprint. At some point, there were officers on the roof because the night before, all the windows were busted out in the 3rd precinct, so they were pretty much just sitting in there, not being able to look outside. If you were ever in a room with no windows and all you hear on the outside is constant banging and stuff being thrown at a building, I couldn't even imagine the terror, because you don't know when that person's going to break in the door. There's one instance on that night that a person did get through the front door, and there were 6 officers standing there with their rifles, and that person looked completely shocked, and no one ever came in, and that was on Wednesday. So, I mean, we could have defended that precinct. We could have defended that part of Lake Street had we had the resources. I heard the National Guard was sitting at Arden Hills at 8 a.m. on Thursday morning, waiting for orders. Had we had those resources, we probably could have mitigated some if not a lot of the damage and destruction to those buildings, to that neighborhood. Because let's be honest, it's not just the 3rd precinct that we should be concerned about here. We should be concerned about Target. We should be concerned about the small businesses, the O'Reillys, the Napa. I mean, all the way into 5th precinct too, we also forget about the destruction there. I mean, we're not even talking about we let that happen, so now all this, even the suburbs had stuff broken into and burned and looted. It's not just Minneapolis that this affected. And for the mere fact for the timeline, so to speak, at one point we were going to, like I said, just leave a minimal footprint of officers there, hoping that it'll all just go away. Maybe it'll just stop. And then we changed, we're like, okay, we'll send you 20 more officers. So now we're up to 54. And then another person in leadership was instructed to come up with a rescue plan to save 20 cops. I mean, to have to sit there and think of like, okay, we have 54, but we can only really save 20? I mean, they shouldn't have been there in the first place. If our goal was to give it up on Thursday, nobody should have been there in the first place. Those officers should have been trapped in there in the first place. We should not have been instructed to take down the barricades on Wednesday because it looks bad. We should have kept continuing to fight. We should have had our National Guard there on Thursday morning and locking down that neighborhood and saving those businesses and saving those people. And at one point we said like there wasn't a whole lot of loss of life. There's video of a person being shot just a couple blocks from the precinct because of the rioting and the looting. I mean, people lost everything. We lost our precinct, our neighborhood lost everything. There's people that can't go to their pharmacy to get their stuff that they need to survive. I mean, these are the decisions that our leaders in our city made. Our governor made these decisions. I was in the command post, I heard it. I heard the governor say, give it up. It wasn't directly to me, it was through a phone call. How the governor says, give up the precinct. I mean, that's demoralizing for this whole state. I mean, look around, it could be St. Paul next. It could be your small town of Faribault next. It could be any of these precincts, these police departments next. And we owe it to the people of this state to provide them with safety. I have family and friends that grew up in Minneapolis, and it's the hardest thing to do, to have conversations with them and be like, how are you gonna protect my nephew? I don't know. So I went on my rant again, I apologize, but it's so more than just what's the timeline. Let's let the people know what the timeline is. It's so much more than that, so much more.
Mr. Chair, can I just clarify for the record on a point from the testifier?
I'm not, oh.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Senator Franzen, I didn't know who was speaking.
Sorry about that. Just briefly,
Senator Franzen, for what purpose do you wish to be recognized?
For the reason I mentioned, to clarify for the record, the comment that the testifier mentioned was something I said, and I want to clarify for the record what I said. Just on that point, I'll get back to my queue with my questions because I have a lot of them.
Okay, Senator
Quickly.
Franzen.
Thank you, Senator. I would think I was the senator who mentioned there was no loss of life reported, and it wasn't, according to the reports we have. There was one shop owner, is what I've heard, that was trying to defend their property. That's the only one. So there's a difference between no loss of life of officers, National Guard. There were certainly injuries, and we heard from Adjutant General Jensen of all those injuries. He literally walked through them, so I would suggest you look at that testimony as well, because it was very enlightening from their perspective how they were collaborating in this situation. So just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
And Senator Franzen, you are in the queue, and I'm just taking senators in order of asking to be recognized. Okay. Sergeant Schmidt, I'm not sure if you wanted to respond to the timeline question or not. I'm just trying to read cues off of the three of you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just looking for an email because someone had asked about the timeline and whether there was any advance notice about this, and I had received an email from some leadership with some knowledge of this, and the the Longfellow Business Association was notified early in the afternoon, and the quote is, we were texted by the LBA, the Longfellow Business Association, on May 25th, or May 28th, to notify us that the police would be abandoning the precinct and leaving us to defend for ourselves in the midst of a riot.
And please state when that was.
Senator Yazinski.
Thank you. What time was that email at, and what was the date?
This one, it was just the person that gave me this just cut and pasted it, so I don't. But they knew on May 28th, before the cops knew, that the Longfellow Business Association knew that precinct was being abandoned before the cops did.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, that just amazes me. And there's a couple closing comments that I'm going to have. I'm going to have more questions later, but the concern of number one that one of you brought up, retaliation to you against officers for speaking of what's the timeline here, so that we know the true facts. I hope that never happens. That should not happen. And I'll be honest, the gentleman that I talked to was concerned about retaliation as well from leadership in the city of Minneapolis. Concerns me what's going on. I also tell you that I had discussions with the officer's wife and what went through their mind that night, thinking that the police station records gotten taken and that their addresses may be available to come back at officers. And I'll stop because I'll cry, but what went through that woman's mind that night, and to see her cry, was astonishing. Now, I called our local Rice County Sheriff, and they came and they put a guard at her property to come down and watch to make sure, because her concern, not a guard I'll say, but they did extra heavy patrol that evening to make sure what was going on. And she was so afraid that she stayed with a neighbor because of what could have happened if the people that got in that precinct got law enforcement officers' home addresses and what would happen. So thank you very much for your testimony. I have some more questions, but and I would agree with you, by letting that precinct go energized what happened not only in this state but this nation. And I'm ashamed for what happened, because that's where it all started. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Senjum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much to our guests here today. You're a courageous lot, I'll tell you, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate it, and I'm sure the public appreciates it, because there are stories here that need to be told, and you're telling a story, and that's an important story to be told. And what we've heard today is things that we haven't heard before, and that need to be told, and I appreciate the fact you've come out today and are doing this for you. Let me just affirm, because I think that you've said it in so many words, but to the core, I believe that you believe that the 3rd precinct could have been saved if, in fact, it was directed to be saved. Is there any question about that? Could the 3rd precinct been saved? I know it was under attack. We saw it on television. You saw it perhaps much closer than we did, but lots of people there, lots of anxiety. Could the 3rd precinct been saved?
Officer Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator. We are tasked, sir, with protecting the city. Given a proper direction and order, because we follow orders, and resources, we absolutely could have saved that building, along with 1,500 other buildings in that city. Our precinct would still be standing today if we were given the right order and resources to save our building.
Thank you very much.
Senator Senjum.
And let me just tag on a little bit of Senator Jasinski.
Senator, one moment.
Yes.
Sergeant Schmidt, did you want to respond to that question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm just trying to pick up on cues. So.
You're right.
Senator Schmidt.
I just wanted to add to that Sergeant Hedberg and I, like we had said earlier, we went and talked. We spent the entire day talking to those 3rd precinct cops yesterday, and they absolutely believe that precinct could have been defended if they had been given these resources that were staged all over the place that weren't allowed to deploy. If they had been, they firmly believe that we could have defended that precinct. I'll just leave it at that.
Senator Senchuk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to follow up, and of course, this is only speculation, but you know the tools that you have. Could it have been saved more than likely without the loss of life?
Sergeant Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I absolutely believe it could have. I think that, again, we had National Guard, a whole unit of them were waiting for orders. We had other cops that were staged at the Emergency Operations Center waiting for assignment, asking to go there, and they were not allowed to go and help.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Senchuk.
And again, just tagging on to Senator Jinsky, not only the eyes of the nation, certainly in Minnesota, we're on the 3rd precinct that night. It's one of those occasions that, you know, what are the most significant events that you've ever watched on television or otherwise in your life? It's to see that precinct on fire, being abandoned, on fire, lost to the civilized society, if you will. I think struck a chord across this country, this state, and in fact the world. I've personally heard about it as far away from Germany. What happened in Minnesota? What is going on here? What about this lawlessness? Why can't we control it? Thinking about that then, as we think about the future, and of course we don't know what the future holds, but given the sets of situations that exist in Minnesota right now, and the people in charge, on another day and another event, could another precinct station be lost?
Officer Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that question, Senator. I think what we saw was when politics and personal agendas get in the way of law and order. Personal agendas and personal feelings got in the way of law and order, with preventing us from protecting citizens of Minneapolis and the life and destruction of property. And with the way not only the metro area, but this state and this nation watch our leaders willing to give up our precinct, I believe firmly deep in my heart that with that same type of thought process, we could lose another precinct. They gave me no reason to believe that they will absolutely stand up with the courage that it takes to give an order to people to protect our building.
Sergeant Schmidt, did you want to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to piggyback off Rich, I absolutely believe this could happen again. And if we continue down the road of allowing rioters, because it was rioters that caused all these issues. It wasn't the peaceful protesters, it was the rioters that caused this problem. And if we continue to allow them to be lawless and not be held accountable, be arrested, whatever it looks like, that this could absolutely happen somewhere else. And I think that since this happened, we've seen these different riots pop up. We've seen them pop up all over the country. I think absolutely there is that the danger of this happening again.
Mr. Chair, to this point.
Senator Dizek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
For what purpose do you wish to?
It's to follow up on this. We had heard from
if Senator Dizek, is it your desire at this point to jump into the queue, or have you got a brief question just on this issue?
Just on this issue, and then I'm on the queue, I believe.
Okay.
I want
Senator
to
Dizek.
follow up on the question of could this happen again, and I agree that we're watching the news and there are incidents all across the country. But we heard earlier last week, I believe it was Commissioner Harrington and maybe General Jensen from the National Guard talk about the urgency and the need and how they were in partnership to protect, I believe it's the 5th precinct, the one over south off of Nicollet. And so while there may be issues around the 3rd precinct, the National Guard, State Patrol, and others were there to protect the 5th precinct. And I know the 2nd precinct, they wasn't barricaded earlier in the week, and they barricaded it at some point Friday and Saturday, and the National Guard was there. And so I do believe that there were at a certain point, the state stepped in with the city to protect those other precincts. I know there was continual attacks on the precinct over North. There was continual attacks on the precinct over on Nicollet. And so I think that, you know, I wanted to state that there were efforts to stop that, and they did not breach that 4th precinct.
Senator Sanjum.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me, and thank you to our witnesses here today. They've told a compelling story. I don't think there's any question about that. Information that needed to get out. It's out there now, and it helps us, I think, a great deal as we think forward in terms of where we go as a legislature relative to these events. So thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Rolfe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to thank you for being here. I mean, you displayed remarkable professionalism. I want to just say that you have one of the most difficult jobs of anyone in the world, and that is protecting people. And I certainly appreciate what you do and appreciate the stresses that you face in trying to do that. And thank you for your courage. Excuse me. You answered this to some degree. I'll anecdotally say that I have spoken to someone when I was out in my community who has a brother who's on the Minneapolis Police Department, and spoke of the angst and the fear and the lack of confidence and the actual overall morale at the time this happened. My question is a little more forward-looking, and that is, what is the morale of the police in Minneapolis right now? And I know this may be a very difficult question.
Senator Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Sergeant Schmidt.
I thought, wow, I got promoted.
I got caught reading a message. Sergeant, go ahead.
I can tell you I have been on 23 years on this department. I've been through several chiefs, been through some difficult times on the department, difficult situations, and this is the lowest I have ever seen morale ever in my time on this department. To listen to these cops' stories and, you know, these big tough guys, and they're crying to you just because of the experiences that they had and how they feel so unsupported by the leadership, by their own leadership, and then our elected leaders in the city. They feel completely abandoned by this city. And I mean, as I said, I spent a lot of time talking to them, and what makes you keep coming back? Because they have that sense of service, right? We came on this job to protect people, and that's what they want to, I mean, they feel they're called to do it, right? So that's why they keep coming back. They come back for the citizens and for their partners. But the morale is horrible.
Sergeant Hedberg.
Mr. Chair, thank you. If I could, there's some numbers being thrown about by certain law firms about, you know, PTSD, and this directly relates to the morale issue. You know, the department says maybe 10 here, 5 there. The numbers aren't really accurate, but if you want a direct reflection of the morale, I would suggest you look at how many people are planning on leaving. And the morale continues to plummet because we continue to get new, not really well-intentioned emails, in my opinion, from our front office, from our administration. We got a new policy yesterday, and my phone was blowing up with, can you believe this? This policy is going to get more officers hurt. It's going to have a negative connotation because it directly relates to our use of force reporting policy. So as far as it goes for morale, it just took another blow yesterday because the requirements in that policy. So we haven't heard from our chief since this whole thing has happened. The last time that we've actually heard from our chief was when he was on the news numbers, saying that he's no longer going to negotiate with the union and try to make a better police department. We haven't heard from him at all. So the morale continues to plummet. 3rd Precinct officers are so frustrated they haven't seen their chief. They haven't heard anything from their assistant chief. The chief of patrol hasn't come out and talked to those officers. They have no support. That's what they feel like. They don't have any support. And it just continues to go down. And I mean, there's 35 people that I know of, just based on pure numbers, that are not showing up to work because they cannot physically and mentally do it.
Officer Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Directly to answer your question, sir, as you heard from our colleagues, our morale has never been lower. I think it speaks volumes for the cops who still come to this city every day and still put it all on the line every day, because let's be honest, we signed up for this job and we know that death could result in what we do. We know that. But when you have the people, the very people that you are giving your life for to protect, turn on you and make you feel like you're on your own, it wasn't enough to just get disciplined, you know? It wasn't enough to possibly get suspended or fired. We are put in a position right now where every Minneapolis cop feels that they're the next incident. They're scared to death to answer calls in case something turns violent because they're actively trying to send us to prison. Cops are scared of dying, and they're scared of going to prison. And it's never been worse. It's never been worse. And to this day, you still hear them saying they want to defund us and dismantle our police department. We're going to lose. It depends on who you ask, but the truth is sitting in front of you right now. We're going to lose a quarter of our department. About 200 cops we're going to lose because of this. It's devastating. And I think we need help from each and every one of you senators at this Capitol to fight for us, because our city leaders are not. Our council is not. The hatred they have towards our department has never been more evident. You see it on the news every night. 20 people killed, 100-something shootings, and they still want to dismantle the police department. We've lost the precinct. We're about to lose a quarter of our cops, and they wonder why we're quitting. And they wonder why we are burned out. It's our leaders. We need you guys. Otherwise, this will be in a city near you. This will be the department that you guys represent, the city that you represent. Right now, it's in Minneapolis, but it's spreading, and something needs to be done, and we need every one of you guys to help us.
Senator Ralph.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You've answered a good part of my follow-up question. I do want to just touch on the PTSD aspect of it. I'm a former Marine officer. I've seen combat. I've seen what happens to troops when they're exposed to trauma, as are other members of our panel who have served in the military. And there's been some discussion about the fact that you don't have any specific program to deal with this syndrome in the department. Is that correct?
Sergeant Hedberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As far as it goes as a specific program to handle PTSD and the type of trauma that we are open to almost on a daily basis, there's talks about it, but it's never really been implemented.
Mr. Chair, thank you.
Senator Ralph.
And I guess I want to follow up on your very comment. PTSD is not only going to be related directly to the 3rd Precinct, that's a specific, unique example of what a traumatic situation can be. But I think you point up the very, very, very important fact that you are faced with trauma every day, that you have to deal with it. You see things that ordinary people never will see in their lifetimes, and you have to deal with that. And I think it's something that we definitely need to do to provide that support that is necessary to give you the tools to be able to help yourselves and your fellow officers to be able to deal with those stresses and those traumas. I guess I just, in closing, just a quick comment. Again, thank you very much for being here. I feel that we need to find ways and tools to be able to support departments that have good programs and to give departments that need help the help to be, and support to be trained, to have the support of the community. And I'm going to just simply digress for a moment and say that I come from St. Cloud, and we have a police department that's been working since the early 2000s, and actually before that, kind of sub rosa. But we have worked for years to build community relationships, and it is working. And I also know personally of police officers in the Minneapolis Police Department that have on their own gone out in the communities to try and build those relationships, and I applaud them for doing that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Franzen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think Senator Ralph did a good segue to some of my questions, so thank you for that. First of all, this is not a trial, so I appreciate that you voluntarily came to talk to us. It's been really hard testimony to hear, quite frankly, on top of seeing it in the news, but hearing it firsthand from a lot of you that were very closely involved. So just for starters, you mentioned when you all introduced yourself being part of the Federation, but the agenda says the Minnesota Police and Peace Officer Association. Can you just explain the difference for purposes of public knowledge? Because I know the difference. I just wanted to make sure people know who you're representing here today.
Sergeant Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So all of us, our members, were board members for the Police Officers Federation of Minneapolis, and we've been working with MPPOA. I'm also a board member with MPPOA, so that's the difference. We're the union that represents the 800 and, well, I think our authorized strength is 888, but I think we're probably down to, we're way lower than that right now. So that's the difference, is we're the union that represents the officers, and that's why we're here, to give our cops a voice.
Perfect, thank you. So to clarify the agenda, that they are indeed here representing the union and not the association, correct? Just for purposes of clarification with the agenda. Senator Newman, can you make that clarification?
Sergeant Hedberg.
Mr. Chair, thank you. To clarify, we're not representing the union. What gives us the ability to talk today is the fact that we are on the board. We're representing the officers because they are not allowed to speak to the media or at this particular type of forum right now. So we're representing the officers of the Minneapolis Police Department. But the difference between the MPPOA is another organization that police officers can be members of. So, and we all are members of the MPPOA as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we're representing the Minneapolis police officers today, not the Federation, the officers.
Perfect.
Senator Franzen.
Thank you, Senator Newman. Just wanted to clarify because I was a bit confused with the agenda post. And I'm going to ask a few tough questions, and maybe not so tough, but I'd like all of you to give your perspective. I know I can't speak on behalf of every single person that I represent, so we all have our opinion and our personal perspectives. How do we move forward after the killing of George Floyd by one of your colleagues? How do we restore public trust? And we've alluded to some of that, but can you help us get there?
Sergeant Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since this has happened, we have had, I know Anna and I, Officer Walker, I've had these conversations with several officers, some of our upper administration. How do we move forward, right? I mean, this is such a huge event, right? And the effects that it has had, not only for Minneapolis, but for our state, for our country, and even worldwide, right? I mean, there's been terrible things that have happened from this. How do we move forward? I don't know. I wish I had the answer, but I do know that part of that answer should involve having all the stakeholders together and having these conversations. And they might not always be comfortable conversations, but we have to have them, right? And we need to have all of those people all together to have those conversations. It can't be one group of people making all the decisions for everyone. We need to have all the stakeholders at the table to have these conversations and figure out how do we move forward and what makes sense.
Thank you.
Sergeant Hedberg.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Senator Franzen. Excellent question. Just to echo what my colleague said is, how do we move forward? It's very, very difficult. I apologize, I don't have everyone's names memorized, but Senator made reference to St. Cloud and how you've been doing a ton of community engagement and policing, and it's gone really well. And I was a CSO for St. Cloud. It was a great organization to work for, just a caveat. But we in Minneapolis have been doing that. You know, we've implemented a ton of training with procedural justice, and we go out into the communities, and we go to national night outs, and we get involved. And it's so heartbreaking. You take this horrific incident that we can all agree is horrific, and all that hard work for the last 14 years of my career is gone. And so we have to figure out some different ideas that would have lasting effects, right? I mean, like I said, we've been doing this type of stuff. We've had procedural justice for, I think, 5 years, 4 or 5 years. And we go to that training. We have an entire unit with permanent, that's their full-time job, is to do the procedural justice unit. And we have trainings and more trainings, and we do it. And we go out in the community. We have an amazing bike cops for kids. We have amazing police athletic leagues. We have, you know, one of our sergeant is the coach of North High. Like, we're out there. And what it's frustrating to watch is that we're detracting now from the Minneapolis Police Department, because apparently we're all bad people, and we're not. So we take school resource officers out of the school. When we're supposed to be repairing relationships, we're just severing them. This isn't an opportunity to have a divorce between public safety and police and the community, because we're not allowed to get divorced. That's not how this works. Like, you have to have us, and we have to have you, and we have to work together. But by separating, it's not going to make us move forward. So by having schools, in my opinion, take police officers out of them, that's a step backwards. I think we need to revisit that. That would be one big step. I mean, the kids need to see that we're not bad people. There's a ton of relationships that were built in schools, and that's how we got a lot of good police officers, because they had that relationship with those officers. I remember I grew up in Nebraska, and we had DARE, and it was super cool, and I thought that was the greatest thing ever, and I moved here, and I wasn't really as involved, but I know my school resource officer where I went. I still could talk to them. So taking those out, that's just one step. I mean, there's so many things that we can do, that we need to do, but separating and just saying get rid of us, that's not the answer. And like what Sergeant Schmidt said, we have to have the conversations with everybody involved. We can't just throw one side away and say, well, we'll see what happens. This social experiment, I don't think, is the right route to go.
Senator Franzen.
I don't know if Senator Newman, if Sergeant Officer Walker, would you like to respond to that?
I absolutely would like to respond to that. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Senator. The way we move on is by all of us being adults. We need the finger pointing to stop. We need the community engagements to continue. You're looking at an inner city kid who benefited from the school resource program. My DARE officer at school is now the deputy chief in St. Paul. I am an inner city kid who didn't have much, but had positive relationships with the police I served, with the police that served our community. I still have those relationships. Unfortunately, this event put a big gaping hole in our department, and we have to pull resources. Them resources, ma'am, are coming from our community engagement team. They're coming from our PAL organizations. They're coming out of schools. We are regressing at an extremely fast pace. And what we need to do is for people to stop in the city of Minneapolis, and I do mean the city of Minneapolis alone right now. We need to stop with the political pandering. We need to heal. We need to all sit down at the table, and we need to continue on the path that we were going, because we were productive in our community. We were trusted. Sure, there's some people that don't trust us, but ma'am, that's the nature of law enforcement. Criminals shouldn't trust us. That's our job. So we're not going to please everybody. But what we need to do is continue to be painted in the light that we're there to help. We are not the enemy. And once we can get past that and we can start this healing process, that's the way we move forward.
Thank you.
Senator Franz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another question I have regarding to the precinct and abandoning the precinct, and I personally, when I saw it, I was devastated for the reasons you've articulated, just the symbol of that, and maybe I wouldn't have made that call, but that wasn't my position, so I'm not defending it one way or the other. But at what point are you forced to abandon any place, including your precinct, when it becomes a danger to your life or the life of the public? Some of you mentioned, I can't remember who it was, that you would have held it and you would have protected it, but at what cost? And that's a hypothetical. None of us will know the answer. But do we know, looking back, how many officers would have been the ideal situation? Have you understood that situation and gone back and reviewed and seen, we would have needed X amount of National Guard, X amount of troopers, X amount of officers? What would it have had taken? And that's a hypothetical, but maybe you've studied it, so you're prepared for the next one. But then at what point would you have withdrawn, because it would have been a life-threatening circumstance, not only to the officers, but also to the public? When do you make that call?
Sergeant Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know what number that is. Like you said, it was a hypothetical. I don't know what that number looked like. I can tell you from talking with the officers that were there, they believe that they could have held that precinct, and they believe that they could have defended it and kept it. And I have heard that. I have not heard one person say that that was the right decision to do. They feel that if they would have utilized the resources that were staging elsewhere, that they could have held that precinct and saved it. So I can't give you a number, but I can just tell you the feeling from the cops that were directly there, from the 54 people that were locked inside that precinct, and from the people outside, they believed that they could have held that precinct, and then they were given the order to go.
Senator Franz.
Mr. Chair, anyone else want to chime in on this?
I will.
Officer Walker.
Mr. Chairman and Senator, at what cost, you asked what it had been before we gave up our precinct, and for the gentleman here who's been law enforcement 34 years and the mayor, you know we would have gave the ultimate sacrifice before we gave up our building. That's what we stand for. That's what we put out in the street every day. Officers are well aware that somebody could have lost a life there. And I guarantee you, you would not find one Minneapolis cop that wouldn't have sacrificed their life to save that building. This state had the resources to defend the building. They weren't given it. The mayor, the council, and our governor did not act in a timely manner, so this wouldn't even happen. Had we been, this was grossly underestimated in the world. Watch what happens when you're not prepared. We had the resources. If we utilized them, we wouldn't even be discussing this right now, because the 3rd precinct would have never fell.
Senator Franz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to turn it to a different angle of community policing, and since we're not taking up bills, but this is one that has an idea that has been brought up to light, is you mentioned folks are either withdrawn from the police department because of the incident, or that we're going to have a harder time recruiting. There's this idea that we should have officers live in their district. I have to live in the district that I represent. I've been, we've all dealt with some incidents and potential stalkers. We've dealt with that, not to the extent a police officer. And full disclosure on the sidebar, I have members of my family who are active or retired police in different capacities. So I understand the sacrifice too. I also worked in the public defender and know that it's uncomfortable to bump into people in where you serve. Do you think that's a good idea? Not maybe to require it 100%, but certainly the fact that Minneapolis Police Department has less than 10% of their police officers living in the city. Do you think that we should allow departments to change that and have flexibility so they have tighter community relations with the people they serve?
Officer Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator. I think thank you for answering that question. We used to have residency in Minneapolis before I came on. And I can tell you by the veteran cops who are on our department, we have cops that do live in the city. The reason why it was taken out, from my understanding, is because police officers are generally associated more with the conservative side. We all know Minneapolis is more on the liberal side. I'm not saying what side is right or wrong, but I'm being honest here, okay? They thought that the police officers who lived in the city were garnering too much support within the community, and they didn't like it as city officials. So I was told by several officers who, you're talking almost 30 years ago, 25 years ago, that is why the residency was picked up. If it wasn't, since we're talking hypothetical here, imagine if 900 cops lived in this city and the rioters knew they lived in the city. Now their focal point was the precinct. Well, what happens when they show up at this cop's house where his children or their children are at? What happens when they show up at any cop's house? Now you have one isolated incident at the precinct what they were attacking, but now they know all the cops live in the community there. I can tell you that I know you said you felt uncomfortable, ma'am, with some of the people you bumped into. I'm not. I'm from the community. I've had family over in Minneapolis. I go there on my off-duty time. That is a difference between understanding the culture that's going on over there. And I believe a lot of people say, well, you're not from there, you don't understand. No, there's a culture within the inner city. Absolutely there is. I'm a product of it. But that's not the answer. And I believe if that was the case at this point when this riot happened, we would have had hundreds of scenes of things going on, because when you encroach on somebody's private property and they're forced to defend their family, imagine the casualties that would have piled up in that city. I think that's the question we need to be asking.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to clarify, I didn't feel uncomfortable. I have colleagues who feel uncomfortable because they defend alleged person of interest, and they end up in jail, and they see them in wherever. So it wasn't me particularly. I did feel uncomfortable when I was getting stalked, but that's a different story. And I grew up next to a sergeant all my life, my entire life in Puerto Rico. My dad was a cop before I was born, so I have a cousin who's married to a cop. So my father-in-law, I mentioned earlier, is actually a deputy sheriff, was a deputy sheriff, not a state trooper, so I'll clarify that. And I lived on an island, so I'm talking about a small place. There's nowhere to go if people know where you live, and nowadays you can find that out pretty quickly. So I understand those dynamics of having potential people find you, but at the same time, it seems like Minneapolis is a big city. They're large and dense. That from my background, it doesn't seem like it would be unreasonable to allow that flexibility to exist. I just wanted to put that out there. I don't have further questions other than I realize Senator Jasinski mentioned that, when the precinct fell, that's where it all started. But I want to clarify for the record, from my perspective, when it all started was when George Floyd was killed. And that really is the impetus of this civil unrest and everything that broke up, not just in Minnesota. This is a national thing of the policies of inequity that we need to look at a little deeper, and not just relationships between police, but just relationship between each other. I think without law and order, we have no civil society, and we do need each other. And we have to figure out a way how to bring everybody to the table and find the perspectives that we need to and move forward, because we can't afford another incident like this in Minnesota or anywhere in the United States. And we do live in a civil society. We pay the price, and we need you to protect us just as much as we need to protect you in terms of giving you the authority to do your job, giving you the resources you need. But I do believe in relationships, and this one seems to be in need of a lot of repair. So if you have ideas, and the union has ideas of how to move forward, we talked about finger pointing. I don't think one person, one governor, one mayor has all the answers. None of us do. So let's figure this out. You have my commitment here in the Minnesota Senate. I represent the communities of Edina, Bloomington, Eden Prairie, Minnetonka. I talked to the chiefs. They come to my neighborhood on National Night Out. We just postponed it because of COVID, but we appreciate you, and we just need to make sure that we do this right because we have no other option and come to the table. So thank you for being here, and I'll cede it to the next person in line.
Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sergeant Schmitz, Sergeant Hedberg, Officer Walker, thank you. I appreciate your being here. It's mentioned in early testimony, I think when Senator Ralph was asking about morale and comments were made back to him, and then I'm wondering, because Officer Walker, you made mention about, excuse my notes here, that you were on a path, or I take it the police officers or the Minneapolis police were on a path that we were on, or directions that you were on that you wanted to be on before. So I want to know from the end of May 31st or May, that week, last week of May, are the directions or the path or the officers or the people that are above you allowing you to perform the jobs that you were doing prior to, or are you kind of feeling like you've just, where's your direction right now? Where are you feeling as far as going forward and continuing what, as Officer Walker, you said, the directions you were going beforehand? How are you, how is that happening now?
Mr. Walker?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that question. The truth is, sir, I cannot tell you what path we're going on. I mean, I can tell you that I'm speaking for the cops that I represent, and the feeling is we're going on whatever the city council is throwing out, the mayor's throwing out. The mayor still hasn't visited any police officers in our city that I'm aware of. We had a good relationship with our administration, with the chief, the assistant chief, everybody. We've had no communications with them. Am I telling you they're not letting us do our job? No, I'm not telling you that. I can tell you that the cops that are under them don't feel supported by our administration. They don't feel supported by the community. And I want to be crystal clear. As the police department and as an officer myself, we know that the silent majority of the citizens of this state, let alone in Minneapolis, support us. But what we need is them to speak up, because you are hearing the anti-cop rhetoric and what's going against the police officers, not only in Minneapolis, but around this nation. You're hearing from a small population of people who are speaking the loudest, and we know that we're supported. We just wish it was more publicly. So people who believe that unfortunately, everything they see on the news is true, they believe that we're all hated, and we know that that's just not the case. So to answer your question, I don't know, sir. I don't know what the future holds for our department. I don't even know how many cops we have on our department. All I know is I have a job to do, and I'm going to keep showing up. I know what I signed up for. I know what I believe in. And until I'm no longer a cop in Minneapolis, that's my attitude every day I go to work.
Senator Anderson.
Would any of the other officers like to express their concerns of the path or the directions that you're going now since May 31st?
Sergeant Hedberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can tell you there's been a couple of emails that have been sent out from our chief. Actually, not even from our chief. It's signed by his assistant, the most recent one, saying that we're not going back to business as usual. We're going to be a new MPD, and some other catchy taglines. 2 pages, read it, believe it. We're going to be amazing. But we don't know what that all means. So to answer your question, sir, we have no idea what direction we're headed. We just show up, do our job the best that we can for the citizens of Minneapolis.
So, Mr. Chair, thank you. So the directions you're going is basically different, it seems like, because you don't feel like you can continue what you've done before, and you're going in a direction you don't know where you're going, And that's very frustrating because, as Senator Ralph said, he's been in the military, I've been in the military, and if you don't have directions, if you don't give the orders and you don't have a mission and you've been told that you can't do that or we're going to do something different, at least tell us what you're going to do. That would be great.
It would be nice.
Follow-up, and it's already been mentioned, Sergeant Hedberg, you mentioned that number of people are leaving. Your morale is devastating. Sergeant Walker, you mentioned losing about 200 police officers, or that's what it seemed like it was. How many police officers are in St. Paul, or in Minneapolis, I should say?
Officer Walker.
Well, sir, we have a authorized strength of 888. I believe prior to Memorial Day, including the recruits that we had in the academy, we were roughly 890. But with retirements and people quitting and the PTSD portion, the answer is we don't know how many cops we have. We don't know.
Sergeant Hedberg.
I think at last check, it's close to around 824, but there are still people that are still technically working for the police department, but they're not showing up because of medical issues. I just want to reiterate, there was a question posed by one member of this committee about recruitment and being able to actually bring officers on. This is going to be a devastating blow. I'm not quite sure who is going to want to sign up to do this job. So I caution everybody at this committee, when we make decisions that affect law enforcement, not just for Minneapolis, but for the state, it's going to have a domino effect. So we still need people to show up and do this job. It's a great job. It's the best career I've ever fallen into. So we definitely have to have the conversations in a really meaningful and thoughtful way.
Mr. Chair.
Anderson.
On what you've just said, do you believe that your department heads are going to be able to retain members? I mean, we're talking people talking about leaving, but do you think there's an effort because of this situation, they're going to be able to retain officers or law enforcement here in Minneapolis?
No. Sergeant Hedberg.
Mr. Chair, thank you. We're going to, I guess you can, it'd be nice to be able to see the future, but this is my opinion. No, I don't think people are going to want to stick around. I talked to a couple officers that I supervised for a couple years. They were awesome cops, great cops. They were out there on the beat making friends with business owners, talking to kids. They were explorers for the Minneapolis Police Department. And if you don't know what explorers are, they're like high schoolers that want to play cops. I mean, that's some pretty cool stuff. It was never me, but it was them, and they're devastated. And one is less than 6 years on, and he asked me, he goes, hey Anna, and for him to call me by my first name, I know it's a serious conversation. He's like, so I'm not vested in my pension, because you have to be 10 years vested, but I got this great job offer to go operate heavy equipment, but I love this job. But I don't know if the job that I love is going to be the job that I come back to in November when we have city council, wanting to get rid of this department. And I have to look out for myself now at this point. So to have that conversation with him, who's an excellent cop, what do you tell that guy? I don't know where this department's going. I don't know where the city council is going to take us. I don't know what the leadership of our department has planned for us. So I owe it to him as a friend to give him the best advice that I can, because that's what he asked for. I said, I'd leave. For your mindset, the guy is broken. Have you ever had a coworker call you up and threaten, can you talk me off of shooting myself today? Because that's happened more than once. I can't come to work today, Sarge. I kind of just want to kill myself. And it's not just because of the riots. It's because everything else after the riots. It's the constant reminder of how much people think that we suck and are hated and are the bad guys. We have council members constantly reminding us how bad we are. Why would you show up to work? So to that 6-year cop, I said, leave. Go be happy. Because you can. You're young enough. You can make a career doing something else where you're appreciated. And we don't have the resources to handle PTSD. You're looking at it right here. They voted us in because they care about our opinions, they care about what we believe in, because we believe in them. So when you get the call that I'm going to kill myself, it's the same resources every other person in this state, in this country have. It's, we'll take you to crisis so you can come out in 13 hours and try to do it again. So it's not just a police issue, it's a civil issue. It's everybody's issue when it comes to PTSD and thought about killing yourself. So we're not like magical people here. You know, we got to figure that part out too. Because the revolving door, I mean, for us to sit here and listen to coworkers wanting to kill themselves, that's a lot to bear. And we don't have the support from our city council. So yeah, 6-year guy, you leave and be happy so you don't want to kill yourself.
Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I have the utmost respect for you three and for all the people that you oversee as leaders in your departments. And I know that there are other cities out there that would love to have you working for them. Not that I'm advocating for that, but the fact that the way you've come across so sincere and so genuine, I appreciate your testimony and look forward to seeing you continue being a proud officer, sergeant, in a police department for not only Minneapolis or wherever your path may lead you. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. To our testifiers, from the silent majority, we love you. Let me tell you, wherever I can see a cop, I go, I'm protected, I'm safe, and I appreciate it. And you're second to my Burnsville Savage area. But let me say, when the 3rd precinct went down, that's my neighborhood. I was a Roosevelt High School kid. Half of my teammates on my football team became cops in my day. And I went to Augsburg, right around the corner. So I have great concerns, and my liaison officers are part of the reason that I love police officers, because they were personable. I can tell you their first names, Heinz and Johnson, but I won't give you their first names in public here. They were fantastic, and we needed them there, and we need them now. But my question has to do with 911 calls. I heard last week that the average response for a 911 call is up from 6 minutes to 9 minutes, making it more difficult to help people. Is this true, first off? Why do you think that is, and what do you think the effect will have on my mother, my 2 daughters, my grandchildren that all live in Minneapolis, my friends? What is that going to do when the emergency calls now, the response is 9 minutes instead of 6?
Sergeant Hedberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Without actually verifying the data that you asked about, like, is this true? I can't tell you the average length of call pens. What we want to keep in context with the calls, they all get different priorities. You have a priority 1, which is the most important. It usually involves some type of an assault on a person or some type of crime in progress, a robbery, that kind of stuff. Priority 2 is more of a report call, so to speak. And then a priority 3 is even more of a lesser type of report call. So if we're talking about priority 1 calls, that's generally what grabs onto the media and the numbers, because those have the most impactful situations on people. I can tell you it depends on the time of the day, how long it takes for those calls to get answered. It would not surprise me that the response time, sir, is is going up, for sure. We don't have the we don't have the ability to respond to some of the calls in 3rd Precinct because we're not technically, it's not really safe to go into those areas. The media's latched on to Powderhorn Park as being an issue because they don't want police to respond to it. 38th in Chicago, it's kind of our own version of Seattle's CHOP zone at the moment. There's places in the 3rd Precinct that the residents have set up their own makeshift barricades and will only allow visitors and residents, proven visitors, to enter these blocks. So if we don't get a grasp on the situation that's happening in 3rd Precinct, it will go down to be another CHOP situation that we saw in Seattle. But to your question, sir, about, what do I tell my mother and my friends and my family, it's the same thing that I told my own sister who lives in Minneapolis. I am sorry. We are doing the best that we can with the resources that our city leaders have provided us. Just keep calling, and hopefully somebody shows up.
Hey, Mr. Chair, a quick follow-up.
Senator Hall.
Who is it that tells you can't go into these areas?
Sergeant Hedberg.
Mr. Chair, thank you. It's not that we're being told that we can't go into it, but we get close enough and we get shot at.
Oh, well, okay, I'm done.
Thanks, Senator Hall. Senator Diezik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I kind of don't know where to start. So I represent parts of Minneapolis. My father was a Minneapolis cop for several years and then was on the the city council. I still talk to a lot of officers on a regular basis. I know Senator Dzinski talked about, and I know you all talked about being worried about the families. And as a daughter of a former cop, I know what that is like. I remember when Officer Pudlick was killed. I remember when Officer Mack was shot. And I remember when Officer Hoff was killed. And I knew those families. So I do know what they go through. Officer Walker mentioned that several cops are worried about being killed, and it is unfortunate to hear. I've read about the stories about the PTSD, and I am concerned about that. I've also heard from a lot of constituents who are people of color who are also worried about being killed at the hands of police. It is not all police, but it happens. We all saw that horrific video, and Mr. Floyd's death is what started this all. It wasn't the 3rd Precinct burning down, it was Mr. Floyd's death. And so how do we heal and how do we get beyond that? That is some of the, I think, where there needs to be a lot of conversation between the police and the community. And I know in some communities those relationships are better than in others. And by community, I mean in the Minneapolis community. But I mean, how do we move forward? I think that is a huge issue. I don't disagree that morale in the police force is probably low, but I know in a lot of those communities, the morale is also low. And again, how do we move forward in rebuilding that trust?
Sergeant Schmidt.
I truly don't know, and I'm asking because I think that is what needs to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator. I wish I had the answer of how do we move forward, but I know it's going to be, again, like I said earlier, we need to have conversations with all of those stakeholders. We need everyone at the table having these conversations. We need, I think we can, as our cops used to go to community meetings all the time, we need to start hearing, what does this look like? What do they envision? And I would hope that the community would be willing to listen to the cop side of things too. This is what we need from you as well, that this is a back and forth thing. I mean, Officer Walker said it, you guys need us and we need you, right? This can't just be a one-sided thing. So I wish I had the magic answer, how do we move forward? But I think we need to start with some conversations and bringing people together.
Senator Diezik.
Thank you. I know in my community that it's Inspector Loining does show up at a lot of community meetings, and I've been at several meetings where other officers are also there. And so I know, and then over in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood, we always have a lot of law enforcement out involved in the community. And I know there's been a lot of reforms in the Minneapolis Police Department, but then we still have this killing that then leads to these riots. So, and again, I'm just asking, I know that you've been on interviews before and you said you agreed that Officer Chauvin should have been fired. I know you have the duty to intervene, duty to report, and I don't want to get down all that path because there is a court case that will be dealing with that. But just, again, how, and again, it's not all cops are bad, but how do we get rid of and how do we discipline? I think somebody over there was talking about you need to discipline the rioters. How do we also discipline the police? Maybe it is just, I know you have a lot of training. Maybe it's more quicker training on, okay, that's not an appropriate response to the community, but how do we just do it, again, to continue to build that trust and stop police brutality?
Officers, I want you to answer Senator Diesek's question, but I would remind you that there are ongoing criminal investigations regarding these events, and I don't think that Senator Diesek is asking you to go there.
No, I totally agree. I'm staying away from that.
Yeah. Who would like to respond? Senator or Officer Walker?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator. The way we get by it, ma'am, is by acknowledging it and acknowledging the mistakes that we made and owning up to them. You're not going to find one Minneapolis cop that agrees with that video. Having said that, sir, that's all I'm going to say about that scenario. What we need support. We need to know that what we have the support by our administration, we have the support by our mayor, and we have the support by our city council. We certainly need them stop appears to be flaming the situation with every press conference that they bring. And I believe that we can grow from this. I will tell you as a direct answer to what you said about we need cops disciplined. That is a misnotion that a lot of people have, that cops don't get in trouble, ma'am. Cops get in trouble. Cops get disciplined. They get fired. They get charged. We have to stop blaming law enforcement for every ill will society issue that happens when it collides with law enforcement, because that's why we're out there. Understanding that some cops certainly deserve to be fired and charged, but for people to believe that nothing ever happens to a cop who does something wrong, it's just not true. And that narrative seriously needs to stop. Cops get in trouble, they get disciplined, they get fired, and if their actions are egregious enough, they get charged, as well they should be. Law enforcement needs to stop being blamed for all the ill in society that we are put out there to fight. So there's my answer. We have to sit down at the table. We certainly need everybody involved. We don't need anybody openly saying they're not talking to the police department and then wonder how we can grow or move forward. We can't move forward if everybody's not willing to sit down.
Senator Diesek.
Thank you. I'll just follow up with that. I agree with you that, law enforcement is placed in awkward situations, and you do get blamed for a lot of that. But I also think we need to, and this is just something to consider, because I do think and I'm not even talking about the serious ones where there are charges and they're egregious enough to be charged, but there is stories, and I know we've had discussions up here on police accountability and on, and just on police accountability, but just having it maybe be more transparent without somehow, and I don't know how you do that without ruining the person's reputation, but just, if somebody makes a complaint, just to make sure that there's a response, that there is a, again, I don't know, public, but just getting back to that person. Or, I mean, I go to my community meetings, and so we hear about all the different incidences from, you know, car hijackings or breaking into cars, and then more recently there was an incident that was in the paper regarding a officer in that area. And so, you know, a lot of questions on, well, what is going on with that officer and what is happening? And the CCP safe person was only able to say so much, and I understand that because number one, it's an active investigation and there's a personnel issue in there, but I think figuring out a way for when that is closed at some point that it comes back to the community to say this is what was handled or this is what I've done, especially on this one that is very public. So just, you know, as your roles, think about how, again, we can bridge that gap and have more of those conversations on what, on just what, you know, because you are interacting with people, you are the public face, and just, again, how to keep going forward, and as we go forward, how to improve that and make both sides feel more comfortable with each other. Just that open transparency and open conversation.
Sergeant Hedberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Dziedzic, I worked in the 2nd Precinct for several years, and it was some of the best time that I had as a supervisor. And I went to several community meetings, and I agree with you 100% that we have to have some type of way of communicating that. As a supervisor with the department, I do take complaints on officers, and, you know, I try to figure out you know, what exactly happened, or maybe I just need to have a conversation with people. I have personally spent, with one particular one, it just really stands out in my head. I spent an hour and a half on the phone with a person who was making a complaint about being stopped in an alley. And I take those times to have the conversations and to, you know, discuss the reason that she felt concerned is because it was an alley and the cops followed her. But it's about education on what the actual job is of law enforcement and the misnomers that are out there and what's perpetuated in movies and TV, and people think that's how it goes. As far as the transparency thing goes, relating to officers' misconduct, I agree with you. I would really like to know who's coming to my calls and what kind of person they are or what kind of police officer they are. And those are the kind of conversations that we want to have with our front office, with our city council, but we have to be a part of that conversation because we're the ones out there doing the job and we understand the job, and we do have some valid inputs to bring in, but it's not just one-sided, so we can all move forward, so I'm just agreeing with you.
Senator Dziedzic. Senator Rarick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you. I can't imagine sitting there sharing the stories that you have today and the courage to just be so blunt and honest with us. That's not something we see around here a lot, unfortunately. You know, we saw things escalate day by day that week of the riots, and since then, you know, we've seen, you mentioned the almost 20 homicides and 140 shootings, continued arson and looting, a lot of criminal behavior yet, and corroborate, I was going to ask if you've seen, you mentioned neighborhoods that are blocking off streets and defending themselves basically by keeping people in and are not allowing people in. And in your opinion, I mean, you also mentioned that you weren't allowed right away to use your training to react to what happened. Do you believe that if you had reacted sooner, that you could have prevented that escalation and the things that are happening today?
Officer Walker.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Senator, for your question. I believe, sir, that if our mayor and our city council would just let our chief run the police department that the way that he knows how to do it. That's why they elected him. That's why they picked him. He's a 30-year veteran of our police department. If anybody knows our department, he certainly does. And I believe seriously that politics got in the way over there in Minneapolis on what happened. I believe that, yes, to answer your other question, yes, we have seen communities taking up the responsibility of protecting themselves. I know that that is a direct result of us being severely under-resourced right now. So much that our chief asked for 400 cops. He's asked for more cops for several years, and he's asking for cops for a reason. And to get to Senator Diaz, if we had the adequate resources to answer calls and be more proactive about what we do as a department, you would have more accountability. You would have more officers who have time to be in community meetings and going into schools to deal with situations with kids. We wouldn't be running call to call to call to call to call where we can't even slow down. We're given a situation where we gotta get there, solve it, and be on to the next one within 10, 20 minutes. If we had the resources, which Minneapolis is completely capable of providing us the resources, we would be way more efficient. We'd be way more effective as a police department for the citizens of Minneapolis.
Senator Rarick?
Well, I wonder if anyone else wanted to.
Sergeant Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe if we would have taken action on that first day and started arresting the rioters, the people that were causing the damage, I think we could have prevented future damage to buildings in Minneapolis. I believe that was your initial question.
Mr. Chair, yeah. Just to follow up to that then, I guess, you know, we've talked about with the peaceful protesters and that there's a lot of angst that's been building. Do you believe that you could have allowed for that peaceful protesting during the day, but we've heard that the rioters tended to come out as the darkness fell? If you would have been allowed to increase your presence as darkness fell, could you have allowed for the peaceful protesting during the day, but still been able to handle the rioting and thus prevented where we've gone?
Officer Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe so. I believe, in fact, that so much so that the governor even believed that, and that's why he had to institute a curfew. I believe the peaceful protesters wanted to be out there longer, but they knew there was an element of bad intentions coming in, and it was coming in later at night, which is why you saw majority. I wouldn't say everybody at night was a hostile person, but there was certainly some good people in there, press are in there, but the good element of peaceful protesting, which is protected by our First Amendment rights, left when it started getting dark because they knew it was not going to be peaceful. A bigger presence there and the understanding to the community members that destruction and harm was not going to be tolerated at any cost. If we had that presence there, we could have prevented almost all of what happened.
Sergeant Hedberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could just add, on Wednesday when I went out to the 3rd Precinct to deliver that one mobile camera to the front of the precinct, the majority of the protesters at 2 o'clock in the afternoon were pretty peaceful, and there were a couple riotous ones in the crowd, and you could actually see the peaceful protesters going up to those riotous ones and being like, you need to back up, you need to stop. I mean, I got a large brick like this big thrown at me, and I was just out there to deliver a camera. I didn't have a helmet on. I mean, I was under the assumption that, we're having this peaceful protest, we're putting some barricades up. I was at the 4th Precinct when the Jamar Clark riots happened. So, I've been through this before. I've had Molotov cocktails thrown at me personally during the 4th Precinct riot. So to that point, that the peaceful ones are actually trying to keep the peace and keep the bad ones out during the time. And it was just astounding to me that on Wednesday when I showed up there, we had CSOs, community service officers, who have no protections. They get paid very minimal. They're out there moving barricades for us because we didn't have the resources. And then pretty soon they have bottles and rocks being thrown at them. And I mean, you just go into go mode, and I'm like, you need to get these CSOs out of here. We can't have this liability. I mean, they're not protected at all. So, yeah, the more violent ones definitely came out at night, but the peaceful ones were trying to prevent the violent ones during the day.
Senator Rarick.
Yeah, I just, again, want to thank you for being here and the courage it must have taken to be here sharing today.
Thank you.
Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, sergeants and officers, for being here today. You know, usually we sit here and we get testimony that's sanded and varnished and packaged and sent to us, and all the raw truth is basically taken out. So I appreciate this. This is some of the most compelling testimony that I have heard sitting here before. So thank you for that very much.
Thank you.
So you're probably asking what a guy from Northwest Minnesota cares or knows about the situation down here. And I will tell you, the night that that 3rd precinct went up, it was a scary night, even in Northwest Minnesota. When you saw those riots spreading all across the state, across the country, and beyond, you know, that was the first time in my life that I've ever slept on the couch with a loaded 9mm there in case things came, you know, up to East Grand Forks. And I made it to Moorhead and to Bemidji and that far, but you know, I knew that I could pick up the phone and call, you know, our chief Hedlund and say, hey, there's trouble out here, and I know that they'd be there. I don't know if the people in Minneapolis felt that way. Could you tell me, was Minneapolis left unprotected during those riots?
Sergeant Schmidt.
Thank you, Chair. I think at certain times there were not enough people to respond to certain crimes that were happening. There were lots of calls pending during that time because resources were tied up with the riots. So maybe people not in the immediate area around the riots, their 911 calls were probably going unanswered. Right.
Officer Walker.
I can say yes. I believe that, as Sergeant Schmidt said, that a lot of Minneapolis was left unprotected from the start to the end. We did the best we could with the resources we had, but I just want to share a personal experience with you guys, because what happened in Minneapolis bled over here in the St. Paul. And my father and my mother, who was handicapped, lived next to a gas station, and right here on Lexington, and they started rioting and looting and trying to firebomb that gas station. My dad tried to call 911, and all he got was busy. So my dad does what most of our family does in an emergency. They call the cop in the family to ask what to do. I've never heard my dad, who's almost 70, shaking on the phone, saying they're trying to burn the gas station down next to my house, which shares a wooden fence. So if the gas station went, the fence goes, and there goes the house with my handicapped mother. He says, I'm calling 911, but they're not answering. What can I do? I told him to get my mom in the van as fast as he could and get out of there. Grab your dogs if you can, but it's about human life. I've never felt so helpless to tell my dad, what do you do when you call 911 and nobody answers, or it's too busy? We can prevent that from happening if we get our priorities together. And that's what we need to do as a state. That's what we need to do as individual cities. We need to start determining that law and order needs to be addressed right now before it gets any worse. We need to set politics aside. We need bipartisan agreement that life and law and order is what's paramount right now. That's what we need.
Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm done with questions.
Senator Senjum.
Thank you, and we can be brief on this one. I served as a Rochester City Council member for 11 years. It was not infrequent that we would ride with our police officers. It helped you as a counselor and helped you understand your city and what's going on. To the best of your knowledge, have any of the Minneapolis Police Department, Minneapolis City Council members ever ridden along with any police officer, certainly in recent times?
Officer Walker.
I can tell you that I am not familiar with one city council member. That's not to say that there isn't any, but it's so far between. I think the last one I remember was the old President Barb Johnson, who's a North Side resident. I know she did ride-alongs occasionally, but I believe that ain't even on their radar. I mean, they're trying to get rid of us. Why would they want to ride with us?
Sergeant Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am not aware of any of our current city council members going on ride-alongs with anyone of our cops.
Sergeant Hedberg.
Mr. Chair, I believe within the last 3 years, one of our council members did go on a ride-along in 2nd Precinct. Something rings a bell to that notion. Now, I know the way the city council lines are drawn up, I believe there's, and maybe Senator Dietzig could assist on this. I think 2 council members encompass the 2nd Precinct, but the name of the person mistakes me that would have attempted to do a ride-along. To your point, sir, there's so much current animosity between the departments. I'm not quite sure which officer would be willing at this point to even take them because they openly just want to get rid of us.
Mr. Chair, would if the city of Minneapolis would wish to entertain a state senator from Rochester to ride along with a Minneapolis police officer, who would I call?
We can arrange
Officer Walker.
it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's very easily arranged, sir. I'll give you my number. We'll make it happen.
Perfect. Thank you.
Senator.
To this point, thank you. I do believe that, and I don't know the time frame, but I do believe, and I'm sure she'll correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe Councilmember Goodman in the past has done a ride-along, and I would not be surprised if Councilmember Wright was probably the one that has done a ride-along, and I do believe I've read that one other of the newer ones may have early on, but that's just, I don't have direct knowledge of that. That's just from the paper.
Sergeant Hedberg.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Yeah, I would agree with Senator Dietzig on that note, because when city council members want to do a ride-along, it's a very cautious move because, well, we've all seen it play out in the media on why it's a cautious move for officers to take council members on a ride-along. That being said, it has been quite a couple of years since I've heard of it, so I do agree with you, ma'am.
Senator Yazinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just one follow-up question from earlier, Sergeant Hedberg. So the decision to take cameras down at the 3rd Precinct, was that done for financial reasons, or do you believe it was done for another reason why those cameras were taken down prior to the Precinct 3 being taken?
Sergeant Hedberg.
Mr. Chair and Senator, thank you. As far as the cameras, the mobile cameras you were referencing, the ones that were in the parking lot of the 3rd Precinct, I firmly believe it was a financial decision to take those cameras out. I'd have to look at the timeline, but yep, Thursday night, 2 of them were torched. I think we lost a total of 4 mobile cameras, I want to say. But yeah, financial for sure.
Okay, thank you. And then just my...
Senator Yazinski.
Thank you. Just my closing comments a little bit, and I will correct myself. I know this event did not start the riots, but I think it definitely escalated what happened, the lawlessness across not only Minnesota, but the nation. And then lastly, just, I believe we need to discipline the bad and support the good. And if that is not done, you have issues. And just the way statistics are, there's going to be bad people, and you're going to have bad things happen. But statistically, there's also an awful lot of good people that's much higher than that. So I think that's one thing we need to remember. I know I always try to do that when I was the mayor, is, you know, you definitely had to discipline your bad, but definitely support your good. And if you're not feeling support, you don't feel like you're doing your support from your superiors, you don't do a good job. And you have to feel that support. It makes it more difficult, I should say. And also, law enforcement are not dealing with the law-abiding citizens in their homes. They're dealing with the bad of the bad, the people that are breaking the laws, and the people that you typically don't want to deal with in a dark alley. So a very difficult profession, and I commend you for what you guys do. And again, thank you very much for coming in today. As Senator Johnson said, the testimony that I've heard today is probably the most moving testimony that I've had in my 4 years, so I want to thank you very much. And I wish you the best, and I want to make sure that we definitely support our law enforcement across the state and this nation. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Members, we have reached the end of the list of member questions. Officer Walker and Sergeant Hedberg and Sergeant Schmidt, just a personal thank you on behalf of the entire committee. This is a committee that is a joint committee with the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Senate Transportation Committee. We just want to thank you for coming in and talking to us today. Maybe not the easiest thing in the world to do, but truly is important to us as individual senators and as a committee that we hear, or we try to hear, all sides of the story. And up until today, we've heard very little out of the police. So again, we do sincerely appreciate your coming in. And I would add parenthetically, I think you could use any member of either of the Senate committees, Judiciary or Transportation, if you wish to reach out in the future regarding any issue of concern to you. Please feel free to do so. And in particular, as Chair of the Transportation Committee, I would certainly entertain any input that you would have. At this point, we are going to go to some closing comments by a couple of senators. You are free to stay, or you are free to get up and leave if you would wish. Totally up to you, but we are just about at the end. So again, thank you very, very much.
Thank you for having us.
I just want to thank you guys for having us and being able to share our officer stories, and
Sergeant Walker.
Just
or Schmidt, go ahead.
Let you know that if you ever need anything from us, please reach out and we will help you with whatever you guys need to do your job.
There is a sign-up sheet there. We would ask you to fill out, and if we need you, we'll find you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, to that point, if I could, in case they walk out, Mr. Chair, to that point, I want them to also know that if there are repercussions of them coming today, that I think they should feel comfortable coming to each and every one of us at this table if that ever happens. And I just really, really, truly mean that because this was overwhelming for you, I'm sure.
And I just want to, thank you, sir. I just want to reiterate, this isn't entirely our story. It's our department's story. There's a lot of people that would really want to have this discussion that we have talked to, but they are fearful that they would just get fired and swept aside for speaking out. So I appreciate the time and the invitation.
Thank you very much. Okay, members. We have reached a point now where we're at the end of the agenda for today, and the hearing for tomorrow I have already canceled and indicated why it is being canceled. So I thought if you wished, we would allow if you wished, we would allow the minority leads, and then myself and Senator Engelbretson on behalf of the two committees to just make some closing remarks, if you wish. It's not necessary, but if you wish. I wouldn't think that they would have to be long. I can tell you I'm not going to talk very long when it's my turn. But first of all, either Senator Franzen or Senator Diezik from the Judiciary Department. I think Senator Franzen does want to make a statement. Senator
I just have a
Diezik.
question.
Go ahead.
So I wasn't here. I apologize. I was on Senate time this morning. And so I wasn't here, so I understand tomorrow's canceled. Are we having any additional hearings scheduled next week, or when will the next one be?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Senator Diezik. I didn't know whether you were in the room or not when I made the announcement, but the answer is no. Today is the final hearing date, we had hoped that we could get Mayor Fry in tomorrow, but that did not pan out. And we reached a point today where we were up against a posting deadline, and so I didn't have an answer, so I have simply had to cancel the hearing. So today would be the last day of the hearing, from insofar as the Judiciary Committee is concerned, do you wish to make any final comments?
I would like to make a short comment if possible.
Senator Diezik.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again. I apologize for being on Senate time this morning. I appreciate hearing a lot of this testimony. I know in the beginning we talked also about hearing from community members on, I know we heard from the businesses, we heard from the police, we heard from a lot of the state participants. I think it would have also been nice to also hear from actual people that live there. I know there were questions raised this morning if they were going into the residential areas. I have now what I term deep residential. As opposed to deep rural, I call it deep residential, and those are areas in my community that are not on a main commercial corridor, and so they were thankfully not targeted. I know that in Senator George Ray's district, Senator Hayden's district, Senator Champion's district, and probably even some of Senator Dibble's district, where there was a lot of activity on the main street, it did go over into the neighborhood, and some of that might have been people fleeing. It might have been people just out and about watching their block and watching to help their neighbors. But as you got into deep residential, there wasn't as much activity, so very thankful for that. I will go back to, I think we learned a lot here. I think we can hopefully go forward with some of this to figure out what reforms, if any. I know we asked some of the business people what state actions could we take to help them, and I think we do need to go back and look at that. And also, I'll just close by saying, and I know you've said repeatedly this isn't the committee, but I think at some point going forward, either through the criminal justice reform discussions that are going on now with special session, or when we come back next year, I think we do need to look at reform so that we can, Mr. Floyd's death will be the last death at the hands of law enforcement. I think that just needs to stop. And so we need to just keep going back to that Mr. Floyd died at the hands of law enforcement. It is unfortunate, and that just needs to stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Diezik. Senator Engelbretson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple comments. After the testimony today, I think it's pretty much clear, at least to me and everybody that was watching, that what happened here and what escalated from a certain incident, and even though there have been previous riots in the city of Minneapolis, all of a sudden this one is getting all the attention, and there's no question about that. I mean, it just is. And this talk of defunding the law enforcement now, and one of the things that I really feel we've stepped backwards on, and it was very clear from the officers today that they were concerned about the SROs, the student resource officers that are going to be removed from the schools in Minneapolis, the city of Minneapolis, and that is a huge, huge step backwards. And it's just amazing to me all this collateral damage that could come from the inactivity of those that were in charge of the city at the time. You know, it's kind of interesting how we can sit up here and we can tell these cops how to be cops, and I'm so glad that there was a couple saying that you should ride with and just find out exactly what goes on. Now, I wasn't a Metro cop, but I had 36 years or 35 years in law enforcement, and I know generally what goes on out there, and sometimes it's not pretty. But these guys and gals that were here today, this guy and the two ladies that were here today, really have their hearts set in it, and we could feel that, you could see it, and it's really unfortunate now that they're going to have to try and hopefully they'll stick around. I hope they stick around to dig themselves out of this hole. But it's not going to be done by themselves. As they said, it's going to take politics aside and a lot of discussion going forward. What we have to be cautious of is not hindering the job of law enforcement just to feel good about it, just to feel good that we've done something about a terrible thing that happened, and by golly, we now feel good about that. Well, now we're going to send our cops out there, and we're going to have to be careful with that. And hopefully the folks that are dealing with that are mindful of that. But it's just hard for me to imagine the collateral damages that happened by the lack of inactivity immediately here in Minneapolis. There's a case to be made, and that's what my friend Senator Cohen would say. There's always a case to be made that now New York City and Los Angeles seem to be getting the most attention, and that's good. That's not good, but it's better than us. But defunding 600 cops in New York now has led to a huge amount of crime. One poor little one-year-old boy who was murdered, was shot, I think, during a drive-by shooting. Don't hear much about that poor little guy who really never had an experience to be out there and experience the world. I just have to wonder sometimes if that would have happened if we would have dealt here a little quicker with the issues that we had here in Minnesota. I think Minnesotans got caught off guard. Minnesotans are Midwesterners. We don't think this is ever going to happen here. But we have a bunch of folks out here that want to keep anti-government sentiment, people that just feed on this, and given an opportunity, you'll see the results that we did by not acting. And someone said about the testimony here about the governor and the mayor saying to stand down in the 3rd precinct because the officers are going to get hurt. Frankly, if they would have called the guard in that was standing on wait, that precinct probably would have been saved. And that, as you could tell by the officers today, that was a huge thing for them, a huge thing for the whole police department. And I think the whole law enforcement family is sitting back going, statewide, going, wow, you let your police department go? I don't think we would do that. So getting down to the end here, it's hard to, everybody says the finger pointing's got to stop, but boy, I tell you, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to say how I feel. I sat and told this very media that was here earlier that the bad guys are going to be here, they're going to be watching, and it's very clear now, according to the officer sitting up here, that as one of the first things that came out of his mouth, the crime is now escalating because of this lack of support, this defunding or whatever you want to call it of law enforcement, of police departments. And this all came from the lack of leadership from the city council, leadership from the mayor, as well as the governor. And they're all going to have to stand for this. And to blame anybody else, I think it's certainly unwarranted and absolutely inaccurate. And But I stand here willing to help, just like everybody else in this committee. We want this to be turned around. We want it to come into better times here because we all do love Minneapolis. We love to come to visit Minneapolis. Right now, it's not a very good place to come and visit, but I think in the future, if we put our stuff aside here and do the hard work it takes, we'll get it done. So thank you, and it's been great, Mr. Chair. Thank you for running a great committee.
Thank you, Senator Engebretson. Senator Franzen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we spent 4 days of hearings here in the Senate Joint Transportation and Judiciary hearing to talk about the response and what went on in one of the most monumental moments in Minnesota history. We talked about statues, we talked about road closures, we talked about National Guard response and other subjects of that matter. But we did not talk about, again, what caused those reactions of thousands of people protesting in the streets and why people are tired of the public safety system that fails to protect them, and why they call to an end to racism and economic injustice. We spend little to nothing, no time on those subjects. We've seen and heard minimal conversation on how we're going to address these issues. And if anything, these hearings have affirmed that we do need transformative public policy on police safety reform, but more importantly, deep structural racism and structural changes across the board. I'm optimistic that if not this legislature, the next legislature will have to work together to address these issues, because Minnesotans are calling for it and they deserve it. And I want to remind people, when we talk about metro and rural, that if the metro succeeds, the entire state succeeds. We live in the same borders of our state. We're represented by the same governor and legislative bodies. So we're all in it together, and we have to remind ourselves that we have to work together. But this is bigger than Minnesota, and it's also, just like the pandemic, it's going to take leadership at the state and national level. And we have no choice, because inaction will not go unnoticed. So I know that Senator Newman, yourself, and Senator Gazelka have both said that these hearings were not to be dealing with the killing of George Floyd. They weren't going to address that issue. But unfortunately, these hearings have only presented one side of the story. And to Minnesotans who are demanding change and are demanding us to seek justice, I want to say we hear you. And for those that were not invited to this table, I'm sorry we have failed you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Franzen. My comments are going to be very, very brief. I had failed to mention earlier, and Senator Dziedzic did bring it up regarding community members coming in to testify. That originally was on the agenda for today, but I will tell you that we did attempt to reach out to community members. We went through the various ethnic caucuses. I invited Senator Dibble to, give us names of community members that wanted to come in. I invited my caucus to give me names of people to come in and testify. And in sum total, I was not given any names. Consequently, that portion of the agenda was stricken. We did receive one written testimony from a citizen from Minneapolis, which we have posted. But that is the sum and substance of the input that I received as committee chair regarding community testifiers. And consequently, that was stricken. the issue of whether we should have been talking about other subjects. I know that there are certain members of the committee that want to talk about police reform and racial equity, et cetera. And I will tell you, and I will tell the public, that I think that those are proper topics and they should be discussed in the future. But they weren't slotted to be discussed in this particular hearing. This particular hearing was scheduled, and the agenda is to discuss the rioting, the criminal acts, the arson, the vandalism, the looting that occurred at the end of May. And I do wish to thank the members for staying on our agenda. I sincerely appreciate the fact that you have done that. Because I think talking about criminal behavior of the sort that we saw and how dangerous it is a proper topic for this committee to have entertained. And that is what we were tasked to do, and that is what I have endeavored to stay true to. I've also really thought about the fact that there were protesters legitimately exercising their freedom of speech in the wake of Mr. Floyd's death. And they had every right in the world to do that. And those folks had their First Amendment rights stripped away because of this criminal activity. And sometimes that's missed on people, is that when the criminal activity starts, the legitimate folks who want to have their voices heard are silenced. And that's not right. And that's why I wanted to have these hearings. I wanted to talk about that. And I do believe that that is a legitimate issue for us to talk about. So with that, members, I want to express my appreciation to each one of you for coming in and participating in this discussion. And I hope that we can proceed with future hearings on future topics that are all related to this, because I do agree that is necessary. So with that, members, we have completed our work and we stand adjourned.